Magnus Carlsen. He's been on fire so far in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, but we do know it is on these crucial second days in the knockout stage that he has struggled before. So definitely we could be in for a dramatic but also fun day as the quarterfinals will be decided. Welcome to the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour.
Welcome. I really like
some chocolates.
Young there, good times. Be careful.
Hey, hello.
Cheers.
Ooh, maybe we will see some anger today. It is one of these 8 players that will be the winner of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. Today, 4 will be knocked out and 4 will go through to the semi-finals. And to guide us through all the excitement today, Women's Grandmaster Houska and Grandmaster David Howell. And David, Magnus Carlsen, he was on fire yesterday. Seemed unbeatable, but what do you expect from him on this day too?
It's hard to bet against Magnus. He looked in imperious form, back to his best for sure, Magnus. He has struggled in the past, but this time it feels like something's different. It feels like he has found that consistency.
It is 4 quarterfinal matches that we are looking at, Jovanka. Where are you expecting the most drama today?
Well, it has to be on those matches where the scores are tied. And I'm especially excited about the match between Hikaru Nakamura and Jana Pomnyachi, because both these players have very aggressive style and uncompromising attitude. And, you know, I have a feeling that they're going to want to bring it on. And in fact, I do have access to Hikaru Nakamura's tweets. And earlier on the day, he did tweet just another day at the office. And you can see he is channeling Dwight Schrute. Bring it on, Kaya. He's game.
You like The Office, don't you, David?
Yeah, I prefer the UK version of The Office, but I don't know. I know many people, and actually the actor of Dwight, Rainn Wilson, keen chess player himself.
All right. Well, it's going to be a very fun day at The Office, an exciting day. Let's take a look at today's schedule, and we will start to follow the first game between Nepo and Nakamura. They are tied after day 1. A lot of exciting chess, and maybe we will have tie breaks after the 4th round. But we are also going to join by international master Lawrence Trent later on. And we will talk about what happened when Magnus Carlsen became a grandmaster at 13 years old. We will get to know this story after the first game today.
I still very much remember the nervousness that I felt on the day and the game where I finally got the title. And my opponent, I think, offered a draw in a somewhat worse position, and frankly, I mean, I couldn't have taken the draw any faster because I just wanted the title.
Definitely is a prestigious club to be part of Grandmasters. All of these 8 are Grandmasters. David, you are one yourself. Do you remember that day very well?
The day I became a grandmaster, yes. It was actually not too far away. It was in Sweden, in Stockholm, and I was a bit like Magnus. I secured the title with a draw in the last round.
And Jovanka, women's grandmaster, such a big title as well, and it is big achievements that we are talking about in the quiz of the day as well.
Yeah, we are doing that, but not everyone can be a grandmaster at chess. You know, let's face it. But we are asking the question: what skills do you have, or maybe even aspire to have, that are grandmaster level? And you can tweet your answers using the hashtag #ChessChamps. Tweet us your pictures, your thoughts, absolutely anything. It's going to be a lot of fun. And one lucky winner wins an Airthings mini device, which we have sitting on our table.
All right. We're going to follow that today. Now, Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, he was fantastic in the preliminaries, won that overall. And in the first day of quarterfinals against Levon Aronian, the world champion seemed almost unbeatable.
He's been playing such brilliant, amazing chess out of this world. On the first day of the quarterfinals of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, Magnus started energetically and outplayed Levon Aronian in powerful style.
Levon fighting, trying his best to make it difficult. Levon Aronian still fighting. He's such a lion. Long term, he's losing. He just resigns.
Yes.
He's seen enough.
Wow, so he does resign here. Now, Levon Aronian, and what a start, Jovanka, for Magnus Carlsen to the quarterfinal.
In his second game against the Armenian Lion, Magnus was hungry for more.
now we will see what Magnus Carlsen has in store, as well as his noodles that we see him tuck into.
No,
once
not again.
Second day in a row. Okay, a slightly surprising move by Levon Aronian. Aronian's just taken the time out to shuffle his king to the corner, but why? Aronian's about to lose a piece. He just resigns, about to go down on material.
What he did in the opening in the second game was white. It was ambitious, but it didn't really work at all. It's been a pretty consistent theme, I feel, at least in the last tournament and this, that I play well on the first day. I mean, I think my win rate as white in the first game must be pretty high.
The Americans had mixed experiences today. Wesley So won his first match of the quarterfinals, whilst Hikaru Nakamura drew in a titanic struggle against the Russian Jan Pomnyachi. Not easy to find, maybe not for a human.
I think this is very difficult to find. Okay, he doesn't find it. Yeah. If he pushed this pawn forward, black is stuck and white is winning the game. I mean, this is the first critical position you mentioned, right, Jan, where...
Yeah, just here, I mean, something like a4, and it's like, once he played a5, there is no defending ideas for black and the pawns. I mean, sooner or later he'll get into the Zugzwang. So when he moves away his bishop, I just play bishop e1 and he resigns. So this is like what I would do, like, probably 99 games out of 100, but yeah, today was slightly different today.
Jan Pomnyachi, he did have a good day, but he seemed so disappointed, David.
Yeah, and rightly so. It's more of a case of missed opportunities for Pomnyachi yesterday. He could and should have beaten Nakamura in their head-to-head match. But OK, they're on level footing heading into today, and if Pomnyachi plays like he did yesterday, he must be the favourite.
So let's take a look at the results from the first matches in the quarterfinals. We do know they played two matches. So Magnus Carlsen, he was unbeatable, and he did win the quarterfinal against the first match against Levon Aronian after only 3 games. Same situation for Wesley So after only 3 games. He was the winner against Alireza of Russia, but we do see a lot of drama happening between Hikaru Nakamura and Jan Pomnyachi, and also between Anish Giri and Maxime Vager-Lagrave. So before the second day of quarterfinals, these are the standings. Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So both up by 1 point. It is tied in the 2 other quarterfinal matches. And Levon Aronian, he struggled so much yesterday, Ivanka. I mean, it's almost like he's got nothing to lose today, I guess. He just needs to be better.
Yeah, he's in survival mode. You know, if he wants to stay in the competition, he needs to start winning. Unfortunately, his opponent is none other than the boss, world champion Magnus Carlsen. But Levon Aronian did give us an insight into his mindset. He did tweet, played badly yesterday, but there is still a chance. As Bill Russell, now this is an American basketball player, once said before a very tough game 7, it has been done before. So this is definitely actually a basketball player from earlier times.
Well, if he's able to win this second match against Magnus Carlsen, then in that one we will head into tie breaks. And what does that mean, David?
That's right, tie breaks. We will decide in Blitz and Armageddon chess. Time will be slashed. In the Blitz, best of 2 games, each side will only have 5 minutes on the clock, getting only 3 seconds after every move. If after those 2 games we still cannot find a winner, then it's Armageddon. White will have 5 minutes, black will have 4 minutes, but white has to win to progress to the semi-finals.
All right, well, for Jan Pomnyachi, it quite possibly can end up in tiebreaks. He is tied with Hikaru Nakamura after the first day. And all the drama today will, of course, as always, take place in the players' homes, as is online chess. So let's take a look at where Jan Pomnyachi lives in Moscow.
That's not the most crowded place, I would say, but I like it. Here we see the doggo and also a football and basketball pitch. Too much snow. Doggo, snow, иди сюда, скорей. He doesn't want to go. He's too independent. My center. So we actually moved here like 2 years ago. This is the bedroom and Rishi, our cat. Okay, let's get going. Yeah, This is the kitchen, and actually the tea I really like. The living room, beautiful Hogwarts stuff. Some dude probably from Norway, another dude. The fridge, you know, is not particularly great, but I haven't been here for quite some time and just came to play the event from this place. Here is the guest room, the camera to record what's going on during events, streaming setup and stuff, yeah. The dude. I really like Razer stuff, the new chair in World of Warcraft style. The TV, and it was PlayStation here, it was before, so some books. This is for me to run. So guys, thank you for watching and see you during Chess Champions Tour.
So nice of Jan Pomnyachi to let us into his homes. And, well, I noticed a lot of dudes, Jovanka.
Yes, certainly. Maybe he's a big fan of the Big Lebowski.
Ooh.
The dude abides. You know, I can't help myself there. Yeah, I mean, when you have those little supporters cheering you on, you can't go wrong, can you?
Yeah, exactly. That's what he needs today. And, well, maybe he also needs to feel powerful, David. And that chair...
Yeah, an impressive chair. Pomnyachi is actually famous as a bit of an all-round gamer. He plays World of Warcraft. He plays a game called Hearthstone very well. He's actually commentated at elite level in Hearthstone. So, yeah, he takes all of these games very seriously.
All right, well, he's fantastic in chess as well, living in Moscow. Let's head into the play zone. Clock is ticking down towards the first round of today. And we do know Jan Pomnyachi. He is living in Moscow. It's almost 7 o'clock for him. But Levon Aronian, it's even later for him in Armenia, 8 o'clock. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in Paris, same as Alireza Firouzja. It's 5 o'clock, same for Magnus Carlsen and Anish Giri, and those Americans. Early in the day for them. So who's feeling the most fresh going into today, do you think, Jovanka?
Well, definitely, I think it will be very much the Europeans, especially Alireza Firouzja and Anish Giri, who are playing at 5 p.m. Magnus Carlsen, of course, playing at 5 p.m. in the evening. It's a slightly tougher for Levon Aronian and Jan Pomnyachi, and I think it's every chess player's nightmare to be playing early in the morning like Hikaru Nakamura is. And yeah, but of course, they have to put those time considerations to the side because it's all going to be about the chess.
It's all going to be about the chess and who goes through to the semi-finals. And I do know Chess24 did another poll about this.
They did, and they produced a poll yesterday. The verdict was that 90% believed that Magnus would win against Levon Aronian. Today, it is 93% in Magnus's favour, and the same goes for Hikaru Nakamura. Actually, his has decreased. It's gone down 1%. Now, 31% of people think that Pomnyachi is going to win. And when it comes to Wesley So against Alireza Firouzja, sorry, Alireza fans, because chess Instagram users don't believe that Alireza will actually make a comeback. His odds have gone down to 20%. And when it comes to Anish Giri, well, actually, his has decreased. He has, well, only 75% of people think that he will now take the victory against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Well, I do agree with the viewers. Anything can happen. Anyone can still qualify for the semifinals. Let's take a look at the matchups before the first game on the second day of quarterfinals. So Levon Aronian, he needs to strike back. He lost the first day against Magnus Carlsen. And then we do have Alireza Firouzja. Same situation for him. He lost the first day. He needs to strike back against the great Wesley So today. For Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Anish Giri, it is all tied after that first day, David. And who do you have as a favorite here?
I think this is actually the closest match right now. It did end 2-2 yesterday. Both sides had their chances, both sides up and down. I would say Anish is the slight favourite because he was more impressive in the preliminary stage, but Vachier-Lagrave is a tricky customer.
But the one that we will follow in this first game, it is the first game between Jan Pomnyachi and Hikaru Nakamura. They tied the first day, but David, you were saying that you did feel that Jan Pomnyachi were the better player yesterday.
Yeah, I think he was the more impressive of the two players. His only loss, Jan Pomnyachi, came in the first game, but after that, he really dictated the play. He had the chances. He could easily have won actually 3-1 yesterday, Pomnyachi, if he hadn't let some chances slip. Nakamura needs to just be better than he was.
And look at that, he's getting ready, Jovanka. What do you expect from Nepo here with the white pieces important in the first game?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that was very interesting about yesterday's match is that Nepo actually dipped into his secret bag of tricks for the candidates and came up with a fantastic opening, what we call novelty, which has been an idea that had never been seen before. And it completely blew Hikaru Nakamura away. So I'm expecting a little bit more of the same thing, actually. I think, why not?
Yeah, and we do see an opening. This time it's the Italian game. Yesterday, Pomnyachi had a lot of success with white in the Spanish opening. This time, similar, but slightly different. We don't see a Berlin endgame today. So this one is more tense. Both sides just developing their pieces. Both sides have castled now. It's about manoeuvring. White bringing his knight towards the centre. Very, very tense. All the pieces, all the pawns still on the board. And see that last move by white. This is a very typical idea. You bring the knight back. You put both of your knights near the white king. It means the white king is super safe. It means once your pieces are developed, it's time to push forward in the centre. And I've seen this position countless times. Both of these players are very familiar with the ideas as well. It's already move 11. But the players, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue playing super quickly until move 20 and beyond, because this is so well known. This is very popular, especially at the top levels. Nakamura is maybe the leading expert from the black side. He has defended this against Magnus Carlsen, against Levon Aroni, and against plenty of opponents.
So it's the question now, who can bring up the first surprise in the game? And being the one with the white pieces, do you think Jan Pomnyachi will have a plan here of some sort?
Pomnyachi, especially with white in recent years, he's become an opening expert. And Nakamura is the one who's predictable. Nakamura is the one who repeats this day in, day out. He goes for this opening all the time. So Pomnyachi, he will be aiming to launch the first surprise. But yeah, it's just about homework. Who has done the better homework? Whose coaches have helped them the best?
Exactly. You kind of summed it up beautifully there, David. In my database here, I can see that it is Vasil Legraf versus Hikaru Nakamura. Grishik has tried his luck against Hikaru. Then Maxime again, and Dinglerin, and finally the big boss himself, Magnus Carlsen. You know, Nakamura has played this position many times. And
what's his score like, Jovanka? As black
I will check his
in this
score.
position.
I will expand that a little bit.
Yeah, Nakamura, he is the leading expert from the black side of this opening. So anyone who wants to learn how to fight against the Italian game from the black side, one of the most popular openings in chess, check out Nakamura's games. I'm slightly surprised Naka is thinking here. Maybe he's just trying to remember something. Normally he looks off to the left when he's trying to recall ideas. Here he's looking down. I think it's just similar. He's very familiar. He's had this, as Jovanka mentions, against all the top players in the world. And eventually he comes up with a move. He challenges the opponent's knight.
So he's kind of mainly drawn, but he's actually lost 2 games in this variation and won 1. So he beat, he beat Alexander Grishik.
In this exact position?
In this exact position.
OK, so nothing new under the sun so far. Jan Pomnyachi, he's built up an extra 2 minutes and 20 seconds with the speed at which he's been playing. Look at Pomnyachi's face. He's not impressed by Nakamura's last move. He's surprised, to say the least, and he's not afraid of showing his surprise. I'm slightly confused as well. I thought there was another move that was a bit more popular in that position.
No, actually, this pawn sacrifice is the first time it's ever been seen. Okay. So now it's Hikaru that has dipped into his magic bag and come up with a new idea to the position. Because every single other game had involved black basically capturing the white knight. And here we have a sacrifice.
Yeah, so if we bring up the analysis board, because there's been a lot of action so far, it was very tense. And then Nakamura's last move has been to push the pawn forward, trying to hit upon white's weakness in the centre. This pawn currently a bit weak. You cannot actually capture it right now. There's a really nice trick in the position. If black gets greedy and tries to recapture the pawn that he's down, then knight takes pawn and a series of trades. Knight takes, bishop takes, and now this type of tactic comes up all the time. So players at home, if you're just learning chess, always look out for discovered attacks. Here, white would play rook takes bishop, luring out the enemy's queen, and suddenly there's a bit of tension along this line, and white can clear the line by giving check, attacking the black king, gaining time, and clearing the way to win the black queen. That is why Nakamura didn't get greedy in the end. And in this position, he decided not to capture this pawn and not to play the move I was expecting, to bring his bishop into the middle of the board to attack this rook, instead pushing a pawn. So now Pomnyachi has a choice. I would be tempted to just capture this pawn, and in this position, everything's equal apart from white having an extra pawn. It's not the most important pawn right now. It's not the most impressive pawn. It is nicely blockaded by black's bishop, but a pawn is a pawn, and it could become a factor in the endgame. Surprising stuff by Nakamura, but he's confident of defending this one because black's pieces are relatively active.
All right. Well, I have to say that you did proceed, David, that around move 20
yes.
is when they would start slowing down, and they definitely have.
They definitely have, and it's all to do with that last move. I just wonder if Nakamura is slightly bluffing, whether he's studied this beforehand. Pomnyachi was certainly surprised by that last one. I must admit myself, I spent several hours studying the last position, but I'd never looked at this pawn move for black, so maybe it was similar with Pomnyachi. Often the grandmasters, sometimes we forget to go back to basics. We get a bit carried away. When we study with a computer, we only look at the top computer suggestion or the second computer suggestion. Sometimes the opponent has a perfectly viable move, but it might be the third or fourth suggestion. And just because, we're lazy as humans, we get complacent. We just forget to look at kind of very logical moves. And OK, in the end, Pomnyachi decides to just move his queen.
Can it sometimes be frustrated, Jovanka? I think I would feel frustrated sometimes that there are so many possibilities in chess and so many positions. And looking at an opening, and then you feel in control of maybe if he does that move, but then it's like 1,000 other moves that you have to study as well.
Yeah, I mean, it can feel overwhelming at times, especially when it comes to memorizing all sorts of things. But what kind of gets you through it is like the pattern recognition, and often you can quickly judge whether a position is very sharp or not. Usually that's kind of determined by king safety or whether there's a lot of tension on the board. And the annoying thing is, and it happens often quite a lot, is when you're obsessed with looking at things on the computer, and when you actually get to a physical board, you kind of go, what happens if my opponent does that? No, I didn't look at that in my notes. And then lo and behold, your opponent makes that move, and you're thinking, But, OK.
And then you're on your own.
Exactly. You're totally on your own. But, here, I think this kind of all came about because Pomnyachi simply assumed that Hikaru was going to carry on playing in the same way that he's been playing before. And every single trend in the previous positions had been you just capture the white knight, continue the game. And here we have a completely different situation because you can actually see the position is really sharp. And it's sharp because white has this rook in the center of the board, which may or may not be a good piece. That's we don't know that yet. And every single one of black's pieces are really active. And when you have a situation like that, every move counts. And this is why you see Pomnyachi, he's actually played an attacking move. He's moved his rook to the side and he's attacking the knight, and he's trying to maximize every piece on the board. And that's the only way that you can play this position. You can't make waiting moves. You can't just go, oh, let me tidy up my pawn structure. No, it has to be all about the pieces.
Yeah, we often hear these really top grandmasters talk about the word tempo, and if you can make a useful move while gaining time, while creating a threat, while kicking your pieces, you're kicking your opponent's pieces back, then that's usually the ideal move. So, yeah, nice idea here from Pomnyachi. Black's knight under attack twice. It has to move pretty much. Yes, it could be defended by a pawn, but you don't really want to weaken the black king right now. So I expect to see Nakamura not spend too much time, just retreat the black knight. And Pomnyachi, if you look at the white pieces, they're nicely centralized. All he needs to do is activate his pieces in the corner. If you activate that rook in the bottom left corner, then white's position looks pretty nice. I envisage somehow an attack brewing against the black king, just because all of white's pieces, it just feels like they will start pointing towards that king side in a moment.
My kind of like signpost as to when I should attack on the king side is actually determined by the white pawn that you see in the center. I kind of have a rule when the white pawn is there, that's basically an indicator that you should go all in for attack against the king. Now, if the pawn were sitting on the square next to it, opposite the black queen, then that's a completely different approach. There I kind of go into space monster mode, where I just basically take up absolutely everything, control all the sides of the boards. And so Hikaru has defended the knight with the queen, and he's connected the two rooks. So this looks like a great kind of developing move. I mean, but it wasn't popular. I can see by the bar that the bar did not like that at all.
Yeah, some moves, it's very mysterious why the computer doesn't like it or why it does like it, for example. But here, I trust the computer, because to me, that looks like a very provocative move. It looks like it's asking white to come forward.
With the queen.
With the queen, exactly.
That's what I want to do, you know, caveman chess. You know, line up the queen and the bishop. Maybe we can show it on a board. And, yeah.
Bring your queen up, line it towards this diagonal. Suddenly the black knight is under attack 3 times from the rook, the queen and the bishop, and it's just overwhelmed. You can't move this knight. If you move it back, immediately checkmate, and that ends the game. And if black can't move the knight, then there's only one other option. You have to defend it. But suddenly the black king is much weaker than it was. Suddenly there are holes around it. These squares start to look very ripe and very juicy for a piece, for a white piece later on. I could imagine, for example, a move that our good friend Simon Williams, Ginger GM, would suggest, pushing this pawn, trying to start undermining black's king protection. And suddenly all of white's pieces are perfectly placed and black is the one under pressure. So I expect to see this move pushing the queen forward by Pomnyachi now.
OK, so the bar is liking the situation for Jan Pomnyachi. He did struggle yesterday. We talked about that, with a sort of just finding that final push in some of the game. So is this going to be a similar situation, do you think?
I'm not so sure. I mean, it feels like the type of position that he thrives in, Pomnyachi. Ever since he's been young, he likes these positions where he can just slowly build up and apply the pressure, where he can kind of play by instinct rather than always having to calculate everything out. Of course, he's great at calculating as well, but he does like to be on the front foot doing the attacking. And, OK, a slightly surprising move, bringing the knight across, attacking black's knight in a different way, but offering a trade. And personally, I would have preferred pushing the queen forward, but...
I mean, this one has its kind of benefit, pros and cons. Let's just say, because with a knight trade, then suddenly look at those 2 laser-like white bishops just cutting across the board. You know, they're just the dream. Even the one that's at home that looks like it's doing absolutely nothing. The more I look at it, the kind of more I do like it.
Yep. It's definitely an interesting move by Pomnyachi. It's got some ideas behind it. If we bring up the board, we can see black's knight, again, is the problem piece. It's under attack 3 times once more. If black plays the most natural move, just trading off these knights, then, as Jovanka mentions, this bishop, although it's at home, it has there's probably quite a big threat in the position. White intends to capture on this this square, sacrifice this bishop, open up black's king. Yeah. And as you mentioned, Jovanka, these 2 bishops, they're perfectly placed, and this is a good sign that you're going to attack.
Yeah, I do really like my chess analogies, and I just love to describe chess in very creative, imaginative ways.
Yeah, and if you compare this black bishop as well, look at this piece just blocked in by its own pawn. I think that factor alone is enough to show that white has the advantage.
Yeah, and I do have to show you guys that Mr. Dodgy has, in fact, clipped the moment when Jan Pomnyachi was surprised by Hikaru's novelty. And there you can see, look at that poker face. And if you want to join in the fun, the conversation, you can tweet your answer using the hashtag #ChessChamps. And as you can see, we just absolutely adore having pictures. So send them all in. Tweet us on hashtag #ChessChamps.
Yeah, Pomnyachi, he's never had a poker face his whole career. That's one difference between online and over-the-board chess. Sometimes online you don't see your opponent's face if you don't have the webcam up. But yeah, over the board, having played in Pomnyachi countless times, I know it's intimidating when you play a move and suddenly he kind of frowns. And, I remember playing him once, and I played a series of good moves, but every move he was frowning, and then eventually I just blundered because I assumed that I was losing just from his face. And
oh no, no! That's a way to get bluffed. I mean, that happened to me against the Grandmaster. You know, every move I made he was gurning away. I mean, it was really off-putting, and he did a queen sacrifice, and I was like, this is not good. But he was looking at me, kind of. I thought better not to take it. And then it got kind of published in the newspaper because, of course, I was winning, and it was like in a shocking display, in a shocking lack of confidence. Jovanka did not accept his queen sacrifice, which was appalling. I was like, OK, I learnt my lesson. Just block them out.
Yep.
Never trust the opponent.
Yeah.
Trust yourself. And meanwhile, Nakamura, he is currently trusting the Pomnyachi. He hasn't taken those knights off the board. I'm not sure what else black can do, though. You don't really want to retreat with the black knight because we mentioned this idea earlier. White will just shuffle the queen up the board, line up the queen and the light squared bishop on the same diagonal. There's some huge threats coming. So if I were Nakamura here, I would just say, OK, there's nothing better to do. There's nothing else to do. Just take those knights off the board and then start to think. Nakamura, he's probably just looking 2 or 3 moves ahead. That's why he's spending so long right now. But, yeah, difficult position and a bit lower on the clock. Yeah, difficult start today.
Yeah, it's kind of hasn't worked out, his idea of just sacrificing the pawn and trying to generate play. I mean, it looked, in fact, I must admit, until Nepomniachtchi's rook move, where he put pressure on black's knight, it did look like black was getting a great position, you know, active pieces, fantastic. And suddenly, within 2 moves, we have the makings of an attack.
Yeah.
And it's primarily to do with those bishops, actually. Those bishops that white has is just, wow, out of this world.
Yeah, I mean, having studied this opening a lot, this exact pawn structure is typical for this opening. And the one reason I don't like these positions for black is because computers, they often say it's equal or roughly equal, but that doesn't mean that the position is necessarily easy to play or kind of balanced to play for both sides. It's much easier to find plans for white. As black, you need to be super accurate in order to defend. And I always hate those types of positions. Computer says 0.0 or 0.2, nothing significant, but yeah, often you have to find a series of forced moves, only moves, in order to stay in the game. And yeah, that's why Nakamura is thinking right now. I mean, he doesn't look too unhappy. He probably knows that black is fine if he's accurate. But yeah, finding accurate moves in this position is not easy. Nakamura as well, we should mention, he likes those... I mean, it was once described by Yasser Seirawan, I think, those 80%, 90% type moves where it's good enough. It's not necessarily the best, but it's good enough. And Nakamura, when he gets those types of positions where he can play moves that are good enough, when he can play them quickly, he builds up some confidence, he plays on the opponent's nerves later on. That's how Nakamura wins games. But here, he needs to find those 100% type of moves where it is the best every time. Otherwise, black is in big, big trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a very difficult position to play, actually. I mean, yes, I agree with you. The computer will probably say nothing to worry about, but the computer has got no emotional element. It's not feeling things the same way that Hikaru is, because Hikaru, for sure, before he captures that knight, he is assessing the danger. How can he handle, you know, those pieces that are going to be sacrificing themselves or coming towards his king? And it's not an easy job at all. I mean, let's have a look at let's do a deep dive into the position, David. Mm-hmm. Let's have a look at what happens if Hikaru were just to go knight takes knight, cool as the houses,
So these bishops back in back in the game.
Back in the game, and I know, and this is the problem. Okay, so white has a few ideas. One idea is to sacrifice the dark square bishop all the way out, take that pawn, remove the king's cover, because opening up lines is basically the currency for attack. There is also another threat in the position, and we touched upon it earlier, and that's simply to march the queen 2 squares forward, line her up, and, well, Bob's your uncle, as we say in the UK. We certainly...
Wait, what?
It's like the most random expression there is. It's like, oh, look.
It's a done deal.
Bob's your uncle.
we have a checkmate on the board. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge threat as well. I think what Black needs to do in order to make sure that Bob isn't Jan's uncle is to drop the bishop back. Black's bishop should drop back, attacking this rook, forcing this rook to make a decision. It's actually not an easy decision. No. Maybe the best square is to go up, but you do allow ideas such as this one, attacking the queen and attacking the rook. This isn't such a big deal right now because White still has this checkmating threat of jumping into this square, and the king will be a target. But, Jan, if he needs to put his rook on a bit of an awkward square, then at least Nakamura has chances. Maybe he'll just shuffle his rook across and hope to defend later on.
Yeah.
I think this is best, but it's not easy to play. It's not easy to allow White's pieces nearby, and there's still ideas such as bringing the bishop forward, bringing the queen forward later. Every single one of White's pieces is going to join that attack, and Nakamura on the back foot.
All right. I need to learn more of these English, what would that be?
Idioms.
Idioms, yeah. I mean, we have a lot of strange ones. Like, I know when I was working with Yasser Seirawan, he would say the one that fascinated him the most as an American was he's got a lot of bottle. And that just basically means you've got a lot of courage. You've got a lot of guts.
Yeah, so if you bottle it, that means you kind of lose your courage and you kind of choke at the wrong moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm famous for bottling it. I don't have enough bottle. So will Nakamura show his bottle in this game and capture that knight, survive? I mean, it's looking bad for Nakamura. That clock time, 4 minutes now left for the rest of the game. Pomnyachi has 3 times as much on the clock, and not just is Black's position really difficult to play, difficult to handle. I mean, that clock time, when you're on the defensive, there's almost going to be no chance. Nakamura, he needs to speed up and he needs to find a clear-cut solution. I think he's searching for something a bit forcing, a bit concrete to immediately solve his problems, but you can't do that. There's just no solution. You need to just kind of hold tight, just be be steady and slowly block all the threats. I think he's just panicking.
It is seriously wrong. I mean, when you look at the clock times, like you said, David, Pomnyachi has 12 minutes. Hikaru has just over 3.5. I mean, that is very, very significant, and that's a huge, huge disadvantage.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on the ropes already. I mean, he has played the moves that David wanted him to play, which was to just capture the knight. And now we are looking for a key move, which is that the black dial-squared bishop needs to retreat. Needs to make a very, very funny move, retreat and attack the rook. Otherwise, there are all sorts of attacks happening on the position.
Yeah, I mean, this just shows to me that Nakamura, he's not really not feeling fresh, not feeling in the zone right now, because that last move, it was pretty much forced for Black. There was no other option. Nakamura spent 10 minutes on it. I mean, in a 15-minute game in total, you can't spend 10 minutes on one move. But not only that, but he played the most obvious move after all that time, but he didn't have a continuation. Surely, if you invest 10 minutes, you have an idea of how you'll continue next. Pomnyachi immediately recapturing, immediately replying, and Nakamura back thinking again. 2.5 minutes now. Bad position as well. It's, I think it's already looking dire for Nakamura.
So Bob is Hikaru's uncle.
No, Bob will be Pomnyachi's uncle.
Okay. So it's good to have Bob as an uncle.
Yes.
Okay. I misunderstood.
But the expression kind of means like, oh, I'm surprised.
Yeah, okay.
Oh. And as if by magic, that would be like a better translation. As if by magic. Look, checkmate.
Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm learning as well. I'm going to Google this.
I find that with like saying in different languages, there's always like different interpretations of them. Right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was difficult for me as a child, actually, because my parents are not from the UK. They're actually from Uruguay. And, they would never know all these idioms. And so I remember looking at these tests and I was like, as cool as I was like, ice cream, of course. And the answer is, of course, cucumber.
It apparently just means there it is.
Yeah, it is. As if by magic. Done.
As if by magic? Nah.
Yeah. There it is. Bob's your uncle.
There it is.
Bob's your uncle. Yeah, and I mean, look at that 1 minute now for Hikaru Nakamura. 1.5 minutes. OK, he does eventually retreat the black bishop. Pomnyachi, meanwhile, was thinking in Nakamura's time. That's a very good practical tip. Lots of chess players, weak, strong, young, old, they spend I mean, when their opponent's thinking, they just lose concentration. They start thinking about other things. They start wandering around. But, Pomnyachi was thinking in Nakamura's time. And Nakamura has gone for a controversial decision. He's decided to sacrifice a pawn. Is it enough, Jovanka? White now, a pawn up. Look at that white rook. It looks oddly placed, but it's pretty strong right now.
It does look very, very strong. And I do have to say, it is almost like we have a tweet from Mayat Tingza Aung, who says he's so used to watching Hikaru playing online blitz quickly that seeing him thinking for over 5 minutes feels strange. I mean, absolutely. And I don't like his decision, actually. I mean, just to give up a pawn, because now Pomnyachi will be feeling super happy because he's converted his initiative, his attack, into something concrete, which is an extra pawn.
Yeah, I mean, now it's not just a kind of theoretical advantage, it's a tangible advantage. Pomnyachi, he can win this game in several ways now. He can try and hustle on the clock, he can try and use his extra pawn, or he can try and continue the attack. So a lot of leeway here for Pomnyachi, and he does push that corner pawn, harry the h-pawn. He pushes it up the board. He's just trying to undermine the protection around Black's king, and it's looking very, very good right now. Nakamura, I think it was a case of long think is a wrong think, and he gave up that pawn. No immediate compensation, no real justification for it.
And dramatic on the clock, I mean, most definitely. Hikaru is down 10 minutes on the clock.
Yeah.
And with the worst position, do you think there's any way he's going to be able to save this, David?
I think it needs a miracle right now. Pomnyachi, he continues the attack. Look at this, White's pawn pushing forward. He should just be winning now, Pomnyachi. OK, there is a sneaky threat in the position. Nakamura has created a threat. If we bring up the analysis board, Black has one idea here. With this last move, bring the rook across. If White gets careless and just, for example, pushes a pawn, then Black will play rook takes bishop down here, eliminating the defender of this rook, and suddenly Black will have won a piece. That is why Pomnyachi, OK, of course, he'll see this threat of rook takes bishop. He just shuffles his bishop out of the way. This rook is on an open line, but it's got no entry squares. It's not going anywhere. And Pomnyachi, he's getting ready to bring his final piece into the game. More importantly, though, he's going to, at some point, just take this pawn. Black's king is going to be too open. Pawn up and a dominant strategic position.
And just to kind of reference Kevin Winter's tweet, which is just over there on the screen, and he's talking about good enough moves. And here, this is like a prime example for me. Pomnyachi's played very quickly, and he's just played by the principles. He's just simply expanded on the right side of the board, opened up open up lines, just developed his pieces. I don't think he's put in too much thought and calculation behind them. They're simply practical and good enough. And it is a good approach, basically.
Yep. And it's the approach I try and use as well for my chess when you play moves that are just good enough. And you can do that when there's no immediate checks, captures, threats, those types of forcing moves where you have to calculate a bit deeper. OK, meanwhile, Nakamura, we see him shaking his head. Well, we see the side of his head, but we see it shaking, and he's offered a queen trade. Pomnyachi, now he has the choice. I mean, a really pleasant choice. He can just trade the queens if he wants to and be a pawn up in a really promising endgame. Black has no compensation for that lost pawn. What would you do here, Jovanka? Just take the queens and then start to calculate after that?
Yeah, I think I would probably take the queens. I mean, well, I don't know, but I mean, I'm very, very tempted actually to keep the queens on the board because as White, I'm attacking actually. The king is unsafe. And also, bearing in mind the clock situation, I think that the chances of Hikaru going wrong would be greater in a middle game.
True. Although Pomnyachi, he won't want to complicate things too much for himself. So maybe taking the queens off is the simple approach. That's not the only one. If we bring up the analysis board, there's two moves that I think stand out. OK, the queens did come off the board. Pomnyachi, if he was feeling greedy, could also have taken this pawn with his queen. But OK, he took the queens off, and now I expect to see the move rook across, attacking this pawn, and once that pawn drops, Black will be 2 pawns down. Not only, OK, he's played it, not only that, but he was threatening to bring his bishop up, check, with a skewer. That's why Nakamura brought his rook across, trying to counterattack against one of White's pawns.
And there's a bit of a trap, actually, because can Pomnyachi just simply capture the pawn? And my idea is that after you play rook takes pawn, then White could simply play rook takes bishop. We like pins. Well, maybe not. And then the bishop will pin.
It makes sense, yeah. pin and win. Here, it's not completely game over because black will just push a pawn up and defend the rook, but it still looks pretty promising for white. Simplifying down, and in this type of position, white is still a pawn up, so decent winning chances. Maybe there's something even better, but this is what Jan Pomnyachi is thinking about right now in this position. Will he take this pawn? Will he just bring his rook across? Plenty of options. You can even give a check with your pawn. I don't think there's a right or wrong here. Pomnyachi, he knows he's got several pleasant options, and if he can maintain the tempo, keep Nakamura finding forced moves just to survive, then I think eventually Nakamura will crack. Yeah.
All right.
Looking difficult. And Nakamura, remember as well, yesterday in his 2 games with black against Pomnyachi, one of them he lost straight out of the opening. The second one, he was in a dead lost endgame after the opening. So Nakamura, clearly with the black pieces, is struggling right now.
Yeah, definitely struggling. And this is really not the most ideal start for Hikaru. You do not want to begin the match losing. And this is such an important match because, of course, the winner of this match will go straight on to the semi-finals. And that's just something that, if you want to stay in the competition, you can't allow. But one thing, bearing in mind, how Pomnyachi played yesterday, we did see one error. He rushed it.
Yeah.
He got super impatient and then just immediately took critical decisions, didn't use the time on his clock. And this is like a psychological factor that you can take advantage of. And you can do this by being smart with your moves. Okay, so Pomnyachi, he's learning from his mistakes and took time out as now defending the pawn with his rook. And again, the ball is in Hikaru's court. He needs to defend the pawn. What about just going mad and just putting the rook all the way down? Yep, the rook is now attacking the bishop and the pawn. Yeah. And the drama is, it's happening here.
Yep, Nakamura trying his best to continue fighting. Unfortunately, though, it's still not looking good. White's bishop is under attack, and maybe the best way and the simplest way to defend it is to use the rook at the top of the board. Just drop down 2 squares, capture a pawn. And not only do you capture one of black's pawns, you also defend your bishop. The more pawns come off the board, the more it will suit Nakamura. But unfortunately, I think white having this potential 4 versus 2 advantage on that right side of the board, that should end up being decisive. Jan, he definitely has learnt from yesterday's mistake of rushing. He's spending a bit of time here, and he's right to do so. The Pomnyachi still with a vast choice here. He can move his bishop, he can capture a pawn. Okay, he's about to make a move, I think. Okay,
he's taken the pawn. And now is it worth Hikaru's while just to kind of develop the bishop to attack the rook before capturing the pawn? Just to throw in some pieces and throw, just to threaten the activity.
Yeah, black's bishop attacking the white rook would have made sense, but okay. Instead, black captured the pawn.
As if he didn't see that move, Hikaru. You were surprised by that rook move by Pomnyachi.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's surprised by it because that's white's most natural move. White was lining up the rook with the black king.
Yeah, he looks in absolute anguish there, Hikaru. This actually brings up a very nice question that we have from Victoria, who asks us, what do players have on their screens during the game? Just the board or also their opponent's webcam? Because if I were Pomnyachi and I were looking at Hikaru, I would be rubbing my hands in glee because chess is not a polite sport, let's say.
Yeah, right.
Because, it does give you some satisfaction to see your opponent under some pressure. And especially if they're like doing this, they haven't seen your move. You'll be like, oh.
Yeah. Bonus.
Bonus, exactly. So do you think Pomnyachi is actually looking at Hikaru's?
I would. If I would play Hikaru, I would just minimise that camera, just not look at it, because he'll make faces whether he's winning or losing. Okay, we do see, meanwhile, Pomnyachi push a pawn. Hikaru Nakamura just brings his rook across. Again, plenty of choice. White's rook at the top of the board is perfectly placed. We call that the 7th rank, 7th heaven. It is. That's where rooks want to be. They've got so many targets. And actually, I think Pomnyachi, his winning plan is based upon that corner pawn on that right-hand side. He wants to push it through and make a new queen. He will need the support of his bishop. He will need the support of his rook at the bottom of the board. But if he can combine his pieces somehow now, Pomnyachi, then it's pretty much game over. Black is tied down, actually. Look at the top of the board. Black's rook, black's bishop. They're just defending. They're not doing anything. And as well as being a pawn down, having passive pieces, that kind of compounds the misery right now.
So is it that H-pawn, Harry pawn,
yes,
that Jan Pomnyachi hopes to make into a queen, or will that be threatened by the black king?
I think he wants to make it into a queen. If we bring up the analysis board while Pomnyachi thinks, you've got the right idea, Kaya, here, because the reason Nakamura brought his rook across instead of getting greedy and taking this pawn is because here White would have had a winning move. White could have pushed the pawn forward, sacrificing it, but clearing this line, so clearing the way for the pawn, for the rook, to support Harry, the h-pawn. This pawn is going to do the job. Now this pawn cannot be captured by the black king. It's defended, so the king would have to go in the corner, and now also we've opened up this diagonal for the bishop, and this would end up in checkmate. That is why Nakamura, he had to step his rook across to cover this square for the bishop, but sooner or later, this idea will work. It doesn't work right now anymore, but I think Pomnyachi, he'll be looking for the right time to push this pawn forward. Instead, first, he brings his rook across. He's aiming to give a check, or maybe even aim to bring it the whole way to support this pawn running through.
Yeah, he's inviting all his pieces to the party, and that is good, basically technique. And I really like that. I mean, they're just mounting the pressure, and, you know, Hikaru only has 42 seconds left. And, yeah, you can see Hikaru is under pressure. Definitely tweet us and join in the conversation using the hashtag #ChessChamps, and include pictures, include absolutely anything you want, and just make sure it's fun.
Yeah, fun is always nice for us as well here in the studio. But, OK, meanwhile, Nakamura, he's not having fun. You can tell that on his face. He pushes a pawn forward. He's just trying to harass that white rook, trying to stop white's rook coming across and giving check. But as I highlighted, I think Pomnyachi, he can just bring his rook the whole way across, support that pawn. OK, he's got plenty of squares. Anywhere that the white rook goes where it cannot be captured, I think is a good move right now. Literally any square.
The main thing, though, for Pomnyachi is just not to rush.
Yep.
He has to be calm, cool, collected, aware. And if he does that, no problems. It's in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, this is instructive for everyone at home as well. If you notice, when the queens came off, when Pomnyachi went into this winning endgame with an extra pawn, he had over 10 minutes, and he spent half that time just trying to work out the details, trying to minimise the risk. And that's where to use your time. When you know you've done the hard work, you've won a pawn, you've kind of killed the opponent's counterplay, that's when to kind of sit still, just refocus, and, not take any chances. OK, meanwhile, Nakamura trying to pick off that pawn, pick off Harry. Will Harry survive here? It's not completely clear.
It's not completely clear whether Harry will survive, but, I mean, at the very least, he can give himself away and just march one step forward, and then White will actually win 2 pawns.
Yeah. So in this position, if we bring up the board, we can see that White's best pawn is under attack from the black bishop. Personally, I'm quite protective of Harry. I would just bring my rook over and support this pawn and help it to push forward later on. But as Jovanka mentions, the other option is to just give it away. Sacrifice this pawn temporarily, king takes pawn, and now you've distracted the black king. You can capture this pawn. When the king moves again, you can capture another pawn. And here, White is 2 pawns ahead, should eventually win. OK, but he chooses to keep Harry on the board. He brings his rook across. Pomnyachi. Nakamura takes this pawn, and now I think this idea is coming, the one we highlighted a few moments ago. Now this square is free for the bishop. Maybe you can push your pawn forward. Maybe you just push Harry first. If you notice, once the bishop gets to this square, the bishop will guard the promotion square for Harry. So that is the winning plan. It's all to do with this pawn right now. OK, there we go. We saw this idea earlier. Let's check out the players' faces as well. Pomnyachi, he knows he's about to win. He's pushed that pawn forward. OK, Nakamura, he senses as well that he's lost right now. OK, there we go.
Yeah,
the bishop finds its best diagonal. He's about to support the push of that corner pawn. Harry is about to become a lady. He's going to become a queen. And, OK, Nakamura...
well, it's game over because the bishop will be lost. And that is it. Hikaru has lost, and Pomnyachi has won his first game.
Yeah, I mean, masterpiece by Pomnyachi. He looked so calm, composed, in control throughout. Tough for Nakamura fans. He just never got in that game.
Yeah. And what a start for Pomnyachi after, I mean, a disappointing ending to the day yesterday, not finding that win in a winning position. Striking back. Yeah, totally. And the most impressive thing, for me at least, was the fact that it was Hikaru, the one who sprung the surprise, who took the game into uncharted waters. And look at Pomnyachi, so calm. And he just proved that he was in excellent, excellent shape. Yeah. This is a man that is ready. This is. Do you think now, David, that it's going to be maybe not a smooth ride, but do you think now Pomnyachi will be able to secure it?
Yeah, I mean, it's never smooth against Nakamura. Nakamura is a fighter, and he brings out his best in those kind of brawling situations where he needs to fight back. But, Pomnyachi, he put the ghosts of yesterday to rest. He took his chances when they came, and Pomnyachi looking really good.
Yeah, and this game was really good. So I would love for you to take us through the highlights here, David.
Yeah, and I think the key position came quite early on, not just from a chess point of view, but also a psychological point of view, because here White has just brought his knight to the edge of the board, attacking Black's knight, and Nakamura spent 10 minutes on this move for Black. I think Black only has one move to stay in the game, so Nakamura at this point, I think this is where he just lost the thread. He lost all chance of fighting back. He ended up taking White's knight, but a couple of moves later, we saw in this position, he went for the wrong plan, simply. He pushed a pawn forward, he panicked, giving Pomnyachi an extra pawn here. White's rook, it might look like it's trapped, but it's perfectly supported by this bishop. And now this is where the key move, or the key idea started. White pushed his pawn forward, this pawn continuing to rush up the board. And later on, after the queen trade, we did see that in this position, White has a winning endgame purely because of this pawn. He won the game when this pawn was about to become a queen later on. Just a classy display by Pomnyachi.
In the next round, we're going to follow another very exciting one. Anish Giri versus Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. They tied the first match, so who's going to win day 2, or will it go to tiebreaks? All right, so these two are still playing. The first round game is going to finish in not too long, obviously, because they don't have that much time on the clock. But that second game, Ivanka, between these two, it's going to be interesting.
It's definitely going to be very interesting, isn't it? You know, absolutely everything to play for.
And this is the schedule for the rest of the day. So much fun still to come. We're going to get to know the story of Magnus becoming a grandmaster very soon. It is all about the chess, though, with 4 games in the second quarterfinal match. And maybe after that we will have tie breaks. But we're also going to have a lot of fun. We're going to relax with some fantastic chess. We're also challenging everyone at home with our chess puzzles. Simon Williams has made a lot of puzzles for you, and this is puzzle for day 5.
Hello, viewers of this brilliant chess tour. Ginger GM here with my puzzle of the day. Today, we're going to have a look at one of Radjabov's breakthrough games and breakthrough tournaments. You're taking Radjabov with the black pieces at the age of 15 or 16, I think, in the Linares tournament in Spain. One of his first tournaments at the elite level. Who's his opponent? Is it John Smith from down the road? No, it's the fantastic Garry Kasparov. Garry Kasparov wasn't quite world champion in this event, losing it to Kramnik a couple of years before, but he was still incredibly strong. And losing to a 16-year-old is unheard of. And that's precisely what happened here. Now, black is a piece up, but converting this position is a little bit tough. What is the best way to try and activate your pieces as black here, or to simplify the position, so make some exchanges? What is the strongest move that black can play here? Think of your most passive pieces, see what you can do with them, try to go forwards, try to create some threats, and try to use the bishop and king on this file. Now, have a good think about that. As always, if you want to cheat, you can go over to Chessboard, look at the free course over there and see the answer. Otherwise, I will bring you the solution later on in the day, live in the studio. So I'll see you later, and enjoy the show.
Thank you, Simon. Looking forward to be joined by Simon later today after game 3. So this is the puzzle of the day. You can find it on Champions Chess Tour Instagram, Twitter account, and Facebook. But let's remind them, David, of what we are looking for in the puzzle today.
Yeah, so this is the puzzle position with we're looking from the black side, we're looking from Timur Radjabov's side. He is playing against Garry Kasparov, and yeah, Simon is asking, what is black's best move? We're not looking for an immediate way to checkmate, an immediate way to win. We're just looking to improve a piece or simplify the path to victory. So, yep, black to play. What's the best move?
All right. Well, have fun working on this at home. Now, we're going to get to know a little bit better the Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen. Now, when he was 12, Magnus and his family left on a year-long travel in Europe. And he left as an international master, but he would return a year later as one of the youngest grandmasters in history.
So I hope to become a grandmaster this year.
And is that realistic?
Yes, I think quite realistic.
He struggled a bit in the autumn trying to take GM norms. That turned out to be difficult for some months, but then we had a month break after he played a tournament in Budapest in November, early December. And during that month, it seemed that everything he had learned during the autumn matured in a way. He came back in January, clearly with Grandmaster level strength, and created havoc in the C group in Mekane, basically. He took another GM norm in Moscow in February. He didn't manage on Iceland in March.
He had gotten his norms like quite in a succession, and then he played, I think, the tournament in Iceland where he didn't get a norm, which he thought was really disappointing. And I mean, even though it was not like huge goal to become like a grandmaster at a certain time point, it's it's cool to have become a grandmaster as early as possible, because that's something that stands there in the history books.
For some time I thought maybe he benefited a lot from being young and underestimated, so that I more or less in every tournament that spring I expected that, well, maybe he stopped winning, maybe it's back to normal now, but at that point he had 3 or 4 very successful tournaments, and it went also well in Dubai. He had a lot of confidence, and with 2 rounds to go, I think he needed 1 point to take a GM norm.
Before the last game that in that tournament in Dubai, I think he was really excited, and he had done really great preparations for that game.
I still very much remember the nervousness that I felt on the day and the game where I finally got the title, and my opponent, I think, offered a draw in a somewhat worse position, and frankly, I mean, I couldn't have taken the draw any faster, because I just wanted the title.
We went to celebrate at McDonald's, which was like not like where we would go to eat every day, and he even got ice cream. So
proud dad. That's the International Grandmaster title diploma that he received from FIDE. So at 13, he became one of the youngest ever.
It's funny to think of that it's almost 17 years ago. I've been now a Grandmaster for much longer than I haven't.
17 years now, Magnus Carlsen has been a grandmaster. Becoming a grandmaster at 13, how special is that, David?
Yeah, it's very rare. I mean, a lot of the players in this tournament, they were prodigies. I mean, you don't have to become a grandmaster when you're young, but it does help. And yeah, he's been so experienced, and his progression, I mean, it was slow and steady at first, but once he got that title, it was lift off. Yeah. And never look back.
So you were the same age as well, right? You were born in the same year as Magnus. Do you sort of remember this when Magnus became a grandmaster?
Yeah, I remember. And actually, one of the tournaments that his father, Henrik, was talking about in Budapest, I played Magnus. And at the time, I think we were both international masters, and he was a bit stronger, but and I had a winning position, but he managed to kind of cause some tricks, and it was a draw in the end. But I think just a couple of months later, he got that title. It took me 2 or 3 years longer than it did for Magnus, but I think it was very clear from a young age he was always destined for the top.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time it was a big thing about who would be the youngest in the world. And Karyakin, I think, still holds the title. Sergei Karyakin, who was in the prelims of this tournament at 12 years old.
Wow.
It's incredible, some of these players and their feats. Yeah.
So it isn't actually Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, world #1, with the highest rating of all time in chess, but he's not the youngest grandmaster of all time, even if he was very young.
No, certainly not. As David mentioned, that pleasure goes to Sergei Karyakin. And it's quite funny, actually, because they're very specific on how many months as well, because I know everyone is desperately trying to break that record. And no one's been successful yet, but they've come very, very close.
Yeah.
Which is very scary when you think about it, Kaya, because it just means that they're like 13 years old.
Oh, my God, yeah.
There's actually a group of young Indian players. They all became a grandmaster at 12, but just a few months older than Karyakin. And I mean, if they continue the same trajectory as Carlsen, as Karyakin, then they, in a few years, could be challenging for the world title. I think those Indian grandmasters, they're all around 15, 16 now, so a long way ahead for them.
Yeah, I remember a few tournaments ago, we talked with an American young guy. I think he was 9 years old. Tani. And he was aiming, he said, to be the youngest grandmaster of all time, but it's not easy. I guess.
It's not easy, and you do definitely need the right support mechanism behind you. You do need an army of trainers, or maybe just one very, very good trainer, and the right support within you. But yeah, I mean, 12 years old is pretty. I mean, I don't think anyone should be hung up on that achievement. I think it's enough to be a grandmaster at 13 or 12 and a bit, and just make sure that the trajectory, as David points out, goes up, up, up.
Is there... Yeah, David.
Also, I was just going to say, it's never too late as well. Like, I know plenty of grandmasters who became... Well, plenty of players who became grandmasters in their 20s. There was even a case of a grandmaster at 60, I think, when he won the World Senior Championship. He'd been playing his whole life, and he finally got that title. So, yeah, it's never too late if you enjoy the game and you keep making small improvements here and there. Not everyone's a prodigy.
Yeah,
yes.
Do we know any players from this tournament or any of the top players who actually were late bloomers?
I think David Anton was a relatively late bloomer. I think he didn't become a grandmaster until much later. I mean, most of these guys became grandmasters at 14 or whatever, but David Anton was slightly later.
So what does it take, David, to become a grandmaster? Just remind me of that, because it's kind of difficult. Something about some grandmaster norms.
Yeah, it's a long, long journey. So there are a few titles before grandmaster. There's FIDE Master, which is when you hit a rating of 2,300. You don't necessarily need any norms or tournament performances. You can just apply for that. But once you aim for International Master, which is the step below Grandmaster, you need 3 tournament performances where you beat a certain number of title players, and you play a certain number of nationalities. And yeah, once you have 3 of those, so 3 norms, then you become an International Master. And it's the same for Grandmaster. As well as having those 3 strong tournament performances, you need to have the rating as well. And that's 2,500 for a Grandmaster.
So Magnus, it was in April 2004 then when he managed this and became a grandmaster, and his sister told us here they celebrated at McDonald's. Don't you just miss those times when celebrating was that easy? All it took was an ice cream on McDonald's.
It still does. No pretentious thing for me here.
Same for you, David.
Yeah, I wish I could say McDonald's wasn't part of my weekly routine, but... Yeah, I actually remember seeing Magnus at the tournament after he became a grandmaster, and I think they were still celebrating. So, rightly so.
All right. Achievements, not necessarily becoming grandmaster, but achievements. That is the theme for the question of the day.
Yeah, exactly. As you said it, Kaya, not everyone can be an amazing chess player, but certainly they can be amazing in other things in life. And we are asking, what skills do you have, or even aspire to have, that are grandmaster level? And you can tweet your answers using the hashtag #ChessChamps. Send us your pictures. The cooler, the funnier, the better. And one lucky winner will win one of these beautiful little things, Airthings mini device.
Handy.
Yes, certainly.
All right. So, David, if you were, I mean, do you have a grandmaster level at anything else?
Or at anything else? I don't have too many other skills. There's a computer game called Football Manager, and I think if they handed out titles for that, then I'd be a grandmaster at Football Manager. But other than that, definitely not skiing, definitely not ice dipping, not too many other super skills, unfortunately. How about yourself, Kaya?
Well, Sudoku. Is that what you say in English as well?
Sudoku, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm okay at Sudoku, but I think many other people are very good at that as well.
I know what to get you for your next birthday.
Yes. I love those big books and crossword puzzles as well. I love them.
But some of our audience have got very special skills, I have to say.
Can imagine.
You're looking forward to hearing them?
Yes.
Well, we have a tweet from Tim Fox who says he's 52 and just started playing chess, and his grandmaster level skill is his ability to blunder away a game but keep coming back for more.
Wow.
I think we all sympathise with that one, Tim.
For preservation.
And another one from Mike D, who says, as a father of 2 little ones, my GM skill is patience. So much patience.
That's impressive. That's one of the most impressive skills.
Yes, definitely. And then we have a very sweet one from Stephen Wright, who says, I believe I have achieved grandmaster status at caring for my dog Louis, who is terminally ill. I want to ensure his life's endgame is as beautiful and peaceful as possible. And certainly that is such an admirable skill, you know, to be so caring and just to look after a pet, your treasured friend. Yeah, wonderful.
Wonderful. All right, well, keep sending them in, those question of the day tweets. We love hearing about your skills. I bet there are many, many nice skills out there. All right, let's head back to the chess, the quarterfinals, second matches, and let's take a look at the first games of quarterfinals match 2, the results. And this is the first round. So look at that. Magnus Carlsen winning the first game against Levon Aronian. He now had altogether 3 wins in that quarterfinals. He's on fire, the world champion. Wesley So and Alireza Firouzja, they played a draw. Alireza Firouzja needs to win today to take it to tiebreaks. We did see Janne Pomnyachi beating Hikaru Nakamura, so he's looking good in the second match. They tied the first one, so did Anish Giri and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and they also tied the first game of today. I actually looked a little bit at that and looked like Maxime could be winning that, but...
Yeah, that one, it was a bit like yesterday's match in total, in general, between Vachier-Lagrave and Giri. It was a bit up and down. Vachier-Lagrave was doing well, then Giri was doing well. And in the final position, I think Giri was the only one who had chances to win. But, yeah, I mean, plenty of exciting games ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, Magnus, though, he's put to bed any kind of lingering doubts about his ability in the second day of these matches. He started with a bang against Aronian. He's looking back to his best, for sure, the world champion.
I mean, we do know that Levon hasn't had the best tournament. We talked to him, he switched federations over to the US, so a lot on his mind. No wonder he's sort of maybe not able to focus as much on the chess as he normally would, but not taking away anything from Magnus Carlsen, I guess. He must be playing his best chess so far in the tour.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, Magnus's play reminds me of a bit of a black hole. He just absorbs absolutely everything in his way. Yeah, he's been super impressive. And Levon Aronian, back against the wall, he really needs to start fighting. Unfortunately, Magnus is on form. And David actually kind of really looked down on Magnus's mindset. He said he's not interested in winning, he's just interested in playing good chess and just learning. And when you have this growth mindset, little things don't bother you. You just don't get stressed by the big picture. And that seems to be working.
That seems to be working for Magnus Carlsen. So does the time zone he's sitting in. Let's head into the play zone. We do know Magnus Carlsen, he's sitting in his home in Oslo, Norway. It is getting later. I don't think that is completely correct. Yes, it is. I thought it was later. No, it is 6 o'clock for Magnus Carlsen. He seems to thrive in this time zone at this time of the day. It is the same for Anish Giri, Alireza Firouzja and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. It's getting quite late for Janne Pomnyachi and Levon Aronian, but still very early in the day for the Americans, Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura. Nakamura, a bad start to the day, a loss against Janne Pomnyachi, so he needs to find a win in the next few games. to take that to tie breaks, or else Janne Pomnyachi will be the winner of that quarterfinals. It's getting close, the second matches, so we did say that we would follow Anish Giri and Maxim Vachier-Legrand, but we actually had to switch up because Magnus Carlsen can actually decide the quarterfinal match against Levon Aronian in this next one if he wins it.
Yeah, I think Magnus, the way he's been playing, it wouldn't be a shock to anyone if he does knock out Aronian in this next game. If you look at their head-to-head scores now as well, 4 wins for Magnus Carlsen, 0 wins for Levon Aronian. This is just their score in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour, but either way, it's looking more and more one-sided. Yeah, Carlsen full of confidence right now, and Aronian just unable to get into the games.
Ooh, Magnus Carlsen, he is eating, again, it's not noodles this time.
It's like a salad, right?
Yeah, like a healthy salad for Magnus today. This seems to be the time he's always sort of getting his energy up by eating after the first game, heading into the second one.
Early dinner.
Early dinner, yeah. We are still waiting for a few players to arrive, but Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian, they are ready to fight it out in what could be their last game in the quarterfinals. If Magnus Carlsen wins this one, then it will be over. He will be the winner and head through to the semi-finals. And he does have the white pieces. So what should we expect?
Yeah, I think Magnus, he will just try and be slow and steady in this game. He won't take too many risks. Remember, Magnus Carlsen, all he needs to do actually today is get 1 point out of these last 3 games. So especially with the white pieces, he won't want to allow Aronian a sudden kind of miraculous fight back. Magnus, as long as he draws or wins this game, he'll be very happy. So I expect steady, risk-free chess from him. Aronian, meanwhile, it'll be interesting to see his approach. Does he burn his bridges and throw everything at this game and risk getting eliminated early, or does he allow Magnus to maybe force things towards a draw and gamble that he'll win the last 2 games of today?
Yeah. But this is always the ultimate player dilemma. Do you do what you say, or do you just try to be as calm and rational and aware of every possibility as possible? I mean, it's not really Levon's style to kind of just go crazy. He's kind of much more the kind of astronaut type, which is just simply be calm and very collected.
Yeah. Usually Aronian plays best when he's ice cold and not kind of affected too much by those emotions. But yeah, this is going to be a very difficult moment because he knows that his time is running out. Simply, he needs to fight back.
And I did love what I just saw, because Levon Aronian, he just took his webcam a little bit down, and we always see just the top of his head because he keeps sinking down in his chair. So maybe now we'll get the full Levon Aronian for this game. It has started.
It has started, and we do see a King's Pawn opening. Will Magnus Carlsen play the Spanish, one of his favourite openings? Will he play the Italian game that we saw earlier in the clash between Pomnyachi and Nakamura? Magnus Carlsen, I mean, maybe he doesn't realise it's his move. Just pausing there, and okay, he plays... I mean, we call this the 4 knights defence. You can understand why, because all the 4 knights are out very early in the game. So the 4 knights defence right now, there are options. You can aim towards opening up the centre quickly, which Magnus Carlsen does. We call this the Scotch 4 knights, because the Scotch is when you open up the centre very, very quickly. It leads to a lot of trades. And here we see a set of knights have left the board. Will we see both sides castle the king? Magnus Carlsen here, okay, back to his food, but he will most likely castle his king. There's a second option if you want to be a bit tricky, if you want to play safe, if you want to give a check with your queen, but Magnus, no, he castles, and Levon Aronian does the same. Bit of copycat there. Actually, in 2018, just before Magnus Carlsen played the World Championship match in London, his final warm-up event was the European Club Cup, and he was playing for Vålerenga, a Norwegian team, and I played alongside him, and I remember I had a chat with him about this opening.
Wow.
So he's got ideas here. I wonder whether he'll use those that we discussed. But yeah, either way, this opening for white, it has a reputation of being completely risk-free. This is the type of opening players choose when they're happy with the draw, but they will try and apply a little bit of pressure. So it's not the most ambitious opening in the world, but it is pretty safe.
So what are we looking for here? If he is going to follow what you guys talked about 3 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure I should reveal the exact moves that we discussed, but okay, Levon Aronian, he doesn't go for the most popular move for black. So the conversation I had with Magnus about this opening is not overly relevant anymore.
Okay. Well, Magnus, he keeps on snacking on that salad, and I have to say, it looks like a boxed salad that you would maybe go out and buy on like a deli, not like something you would get takeout. So do you actually think that, like, in these 15 minutes he has between games, he just ran out of his apartment to a deli, bought his salad, and went back in?
I think more likely the fridge.
Yeah, maybe he got it beforehand. Maybe more likely, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I find this quite an interesting choice because, you know, yes, I can see that White has really recently been playing this particular opening for a slight advantage. But I remember when I played this kind of particular position with the black pieces, I always really liked it because I had pawns in the center. Mm-hmm. And that's very easy to handle, actually. And you just simply keep making moves. And this is why I'm a little bit suspicious of this particular approach, because you're kind of playing into something that Levon Aronian likes.
Yeah, you're right. Levon Aronian does like having extra central pawns. If we bring up the analysis board, we see this position is pretty balanced right now, same material, same pawns and everything. But the key difference here is that White has 3 connected pawns on the left side of the board, whereas Black's are slightly broken. Black has an isolated pawn here. However, he does have a central pawn. And this pawn, especially in the middle of the board, this one, it could become a strength or it could become a target. Meanwhile, I think the key priority for Black is to break this pin. You need to do something about the tension here. Magnus right now is thinking, I think what he's considering is possibly to bring his queen out to put even more pressure on this knight, and then Levon Aronian, he will drop his bishop back just to kind of shore up the defense of this piece. And then the plan will be to push the rest of his central pawns forward. If he can push these guys in unison, then Black has a great position. Meanwhile, Magnus will just be bringing his rooks across. Not too many weaknesses in the White's position. That's why it's regarded as pretty safe. And if Magnus plays this move, bring the queen out, if he other options would be to maybe reroute the knight, push a pawn up just to kind of control some squares. Lots of choice for Magnus Carlsen, but super solid at the moment. And he did, I mean, the tournament I mentioned in Greece in 2018, he did play this opening against Ding Liren in a key game, and he actually almost lost that one. So although he said it was safety first and in general it's played for a small advantage for White, there are some risks, as Jovanka mentioned. If Black's able to coordinate and start pushing those central pawns, then Black is doing okay. Okay, meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen moves his knight. I mentioned moving the knight the other way. The knight goes, well, it just jumps towards the left, but it's aiming back towards the centre later on. And Levon Aronian reacts instantly without even thinking. He must have done his homework here, Levon. He must have been playing these positions for 20-odd years now, Levon Aronian, as Black, and he's pushing his pawns. You like to see it, right, Jovanka?
Yeah, of course. Is there any
your style
doubt?
Of chess?
Exactly. There's no subtlety involved here, no manoeuvring. But I have to say, having sat next to you now on these shows, I've now come round to this idea of when you play the endgame, that you wait and you improve your position as long as you can, and then you commit that little pawn move. And I've been learning. I can't wait to try it out, actually. I can't wait for the next time.
Don't blame me if it goes wrong.
Well, I don't think it can. How can it? If you have a slight advantage, then you just keep making. It does require a lot of nerves, though.
A lot of patience.
You have to be careful.
Yes, as that tweet said earlier, you need patience in life, not just in chess. And meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen, I expect him to maybe kick away that black dark squared bishop, just push a pawn on the left side of the board, just one square. I'm not sure which pawn, but you can kick that bishop away, kick it backwards. Slightly surprising White's last move, that knight jump. That knight looks a bit offside now. It doesn't look like it has too many great squares to go to. Maybe Magnus Carlsen just underestimating Black's reply. Meanwhile, okay, he's still tucking into his food. He won't be too worried. This position, it's still relatively, not this exact position, but it's...
it's actually, we're still in the depth of theory. There's like 141 games in my database. That is a lot of games. The main move is actually to chase away the black bishop. You just have to just kick it, pick up your pawn that's in front of the rook, place it one square, and then just chase that bishop away. That's the main move. And then after that, yeah, we can show a few lines.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the main move would be to kick away this bishop?
Yeah, but once the bishop retreats, the whole idea is that once you said go, or once you kind of push that button, you have to continue. And that's why the pawn move advances again. And now...
What happens if black gets greedy and takes this pawn?
If black gets greedy, then this is the very crafty point behind it. You actually pick up your queen and you slide it along. That's it, to the right. And then the whole point is that actually the pawn cannot capture the pawn because there is something that we call the pin in operation.
So if pawn takes pawn, attacking white's queen, this bishop is currently defended by black's queen, so you cannot capture it, but you try and deflect the black queen, I guess.
Yeah, you're going to deflect it first. Yeah, that's right.
And now black has to ruin his own pawn structure. It's really undesirable to do this because if queen takes bishop, then white's queen jumps out and wins a piece. So very sneaky stuff there. I've never seen that idea before, I must confess.
I've never seen it either, actually. So, we learn new things all the time.
Yeah, so clearly this concept is familiar to Magnus, and he's just debating whether to go into this. Let's check out the players' facial expressions, because Levon Aronian maybe has just disturbed Magnus with the speed of his moves. This is probably what Magnus was aiming for, that line that we just showed on the board. This is what Magnus must have wanted to play with that knight move. I mean, there's no other point behind that knight move, simply. But just Levon Aronian replying instantly has made Magnus Carlsen second-guess himself and start considering whether he should actually go for that type of idea. Because there's actually nothing more unpleasant in chess than trying out an idea and realising, oh no, my opponent actually knows it better. They are better prepared than me. And often in such situations, it's actually wiser to just say, OK, you've won the opening battle. I'm going to play something a bit different. It's not what I planned, but at least we'll both be on our own. And it becomes a battle of understanding instead of memory. So yeah, Magnus Carlsen, if he senses Aronian will know what to do in that last line that we showed, then he might be looking for something a bit new, a bit different.
Well, the bar is definitely saying that this is looking like a draw, and Magnus definitely one who has spent the most time in this game and on this move.
Yeah, and we've said this in previous tournaments on the tour, that Magnus Carlsen, on the second day, he tends to get in time trouble. He gets low on the clock very early on, and it's really rare to see him do that. I mean, in the prelims yesterday, in the first game today, he was just playing by instinct, playing quickly. He was in a rhythm. It was working well.
There's a reason, David, why he's going down on the clock, and that's because he's eating his salad and not playing the board.
Someone needs to have a word with him. Now is not the time to chill. You can eat after you've won this game, Magnus. But yeah, it's surprising to see him spend so long on the clock at this early stage. It's only move 12.
Yeah.
And actually the first, 10, 11 moves, I mean, he's seen that thousands of times before in his career. So just on the last move or two, he's spent about half his time. Surprising stuff from the world champion, I must admit.
All right, well, let's see if this is another moment where Magnus Carlsen, like he has done on so many of the second days in the knockout stages, loses focus and starts sort of becoming his own worst enemy.
Yeah, not only is he potentially losing focus, but his opponents, they surely gain confidence when they see him not really concentrating, not really working out variations, hesitating in quite well-known positions. Yeah, I wonder what Levon's thinking right now.
Well, OK, he's made his move. He has played the most common response. And now Levon just has to step the bishop back. OK, and now it comes. The pawn steps forward. And we're going to see that line, actually, where if Levon does capture the pawn, then the queen will just slide itself craftily to the right. And that's an idea I've actually never seen before. And I know you said that you also hadn't seen it. And all the times that we've actually met this opening.
Yeah, I've played this opening with white and black since I was, 5 years old, and I've never seen this exact idea before. And, I mean, there's so many nuances, so many options for both sides. So, OK, maybe Levon Aronian is familiar with it, maybe not. Maybe he's a bit like us and hasn't seen it. But either way, Magnus plays the most common idea. It's just surprising to see it take him 7.5 minutes to do that. It feels like this idea, especially that queen move that we showed on the board a moment ago, shifting that queen across one square, it's the type of move that no human wouldn't just not be on your radar simply. So it's the type of move you either know it or you don't. So that's why it surprises me that Magnus has already lost 7.5 minutes. Probably he knew it and he just wasn't ready to make the move.
Okay, so Levon has chosen the actually the most popular response, which is to retreat the bishop. And again, we are still very much in the realms of everything having been played and seen before.
So we did see a trade of pawns, Magnus quickly pushing a pawn there. So with Magnus Carlsen's last move, he's just trying to stop the advance of Black's central pawn. Maybe he's trying to take control of some squares for himself. This position, very balanced, still the same assortment of pieces. Both sides have reason to be happy here, I think. The only issue for Levon Aronian is, okay, despite the fact he has a big time advantage, is how do you create some play? How do you disturb White's coordination? How do you get active yourself before Magnus is able to kind of hoover off all the pieces, for example? It definitely feels like Magnus isn't necessarily playing for the win in this game. It feels like Magnus would be happy with the draw in this one. But for Levon, that's not good enough. He needs to he needs to do something.
Do you think Magnus is sort of relying a little bit on that? Because we do know if you push too hard, then you can create chances for your opponent. So Magnus, knowing that Levon has to find 2 wins in two of the 3 last games, do you think he's just waiting for Levon to be too brave?
Yeah, I mean, that must be the strategy, right? He's hoping that Levon will maybe start overthinking things, start to feel the pressure of the situation. And that could backfire on Levon. But then again, if Magnus plays too passively, plays too much for the draw, I've learned this from my own experience, but I mean, every top player that I know would say the same. If you play for a draw, it will backfire. It will come back to haunt you. The best way to play for a draw is actually just to play for a win. And often later on, you'll get chances to repeat the position, or you'll get chances to simplify. If you go too passive, if you just kind of curl up into a ball, often it's not good enough. Your opponent will find something later on to destabilize you. And,
Now, this is actually a very, very rare line that Magnus has chosen. I mean, the last time it was played was in 2018, and before that, 2016. The highest level that's been faced was Alexei Shirov. Sorry, he was having the black pieces in 2016, but before that, we're looking at 2006, and then before that, we're looking at 1998.
Wow.
And it's super, super rare. And, Levon seems to know what he's doing. All the moves are intuitive. So he's attacked the bishop, and Magnus has retreated the bishop, keeping his eyes on that pin.
Yeah, so this position, it tends to arise once every 10 years or thereabouts. Very rare stuff.
Like a meteor or something from space.
Shooting star.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's the kind of way to do your opening preparation. I know Bobby Fischer, he was famous for picking up the old books and kind of scouring them for old ideas. And I do know, I remember having this conversation with Simon Williams, where this was in 2008 when we were playing in the European individual championships. And he was saying that he had done some preparation in a line that had last been seen in 1898.
You should have said to Simon, it's probably not been seen since for a reason.
Well, no one said that. The Brits don't say that. The Brits go, well done, Simon. Good going.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen has centralized his knight. He's been preparing this outpost, which Black cannot challenge with pawns. Magnus has been preparing that square with his last 4-5 moves. So, a very sensible idea by Magnus Carlsen. That knight is traded, but at the cost of Black's bishop. And this shows that Levon Aronian, he just wants to simplify things. His winning chances are dwindling, though. The pawn structure is almost symmetrical. Black's actually created a weakness of his own in front of the Black king. This has actually come back to bite Aronian in the past. We've seen him push a pawn in front of his king and get punished by Wesley So, by Magnus, by several others. But in this position, it just looks too simplified. Black's knight is getting ready to capture a bishop. If that knight trades itself off for one of the 2 bishops, then the position is just completely balanced. yeah, I think this position is fizzling towards what opening theorists call equality, where chances are completely balanced. Not too much to hope for either side. I would still slightly prefer to be white, to be honest, because white's king is safer. But that's not such an issue because black's king, although it's a bit exposed, there's just no white pieces to attack it right now. Yeah, Magnus, he's just having that kind of philosophical chat with himself, just thinking, okay, do I risk it? Do I go in the attack? Do I just allow this draw to happen and kind of ask Levon whether he can win the final 2 games on demand?
It must be a little bit of a nice feeling for Levon as well. I mean, you just have nothing to lose.
Yeah. Yeah, many people thrive on it, but then again, I mean, he's still in the tournament, so that's something to lose.
Yeah, well,
if he
that's
just
true.
get eliminated. But yeah, I mean, it's now or never, essentially, for him.
Yeah.
I was slightly surprised by Levon Aronian's opening choice. I mean, it's principled, it's what he normally does, but it's really kind of last chance saloon. So, yeah, I mean, maybe he'll just be aiming to draw this game. If he can win with white, I mean, Levon Aronian is so strong with the white pieces. If he can win with white in the next game, then in the final game with black, that's when Levon Aronian will take some crazy risks. That's when he'll be thinking about kind of nothing to lose type of mentality. But, OK, that's at the moment, he just needs to stay in this game. Magnus Carlsen bringing the queen out. White's queen eyeing up a pawn along the same line. Black's only unprotected piece right now is that pawn. So Magnus playing a very logical move.
Yeah. And I have a question, actually, from Michael Danucci, who asks us, will these GMs struggle to adjust back to over-the-board chess after getting so comfortable playing at home online? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, really interesting. And actually, we saw it in the Tata Steel Masters in January, right, where the winner of the tournament was actually Jordan van Foreest. And I mean, some of the superstars like Magnus Carlsen, like Fabiano Caruana, actually Fabiano was very impressive, but Magnus just wasn't at his best somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe he'd been playing, maybe he just struggled to get back in that mindset, get back in that routine.
MVL as well struggled, didn't he?
MVL struggled big time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, but interestingly enough, Fabiano has actually declined to play. I mean, he publicly announced in Tata Steel that he was not going to play these online events. He was simply going to focus on over the board. So, I mean, he's kind of made that conscious decision in preparation for the candidates. But
it does mean he's not playing that much, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's going to lose that edge, that competitive edge, because you can see these guys. I mean, you can even see Anish. Anish said this is like perfect training for his candidates tournaments, because you got to get that competitive edge, that killer instinct going. And this is a fantastic training ground, let's face it.
Yeah.
I mean, Fabiano Caruana, maybe he'll rethink his stance if the candidates doesn't go so well. Maybe he'll kind of get restless, get itchy feet and want to play in these online tournaments. But for players like Anish Giri, I mean, he's been playing in all these tour tournaments, and then Tata Steel Masters, he almost won it.
Yeah.
Anish Giri played phenomenal chess. So it definitely didn't hurt him. I think it just takes some people longer than others to get back in the shape and get back in that... get back in the mood for over-the-board classical chess. It's not just being at the board, it's also the time control. Tata Steel Masters, each game would be like, it would be a 7-hour time limit for one game. And yeah, it takes stamina, it takes endurance.
Yeah. And I have to say, so Magnus has been eating a salad. He's been playing very slowly these first moves, but he seems on his camera to be a little bit restless now. It almost feels like something is coming in. Oh, look at that. Janne Pomnyachi has won also the second game against Hikaru Nakamura. That means he's only going to need a draw in the next game to be the winner of that quarterfinals.
Wow.
That's incredible. I mean, Nakamura has just lost that game with white in 28 moves. You nearly never see Nakamura lose with white, let alone so quickly. And Pomnyachi, we saw it in the last game. We said it. He's looking good. He's feels like something's clicked for him. Also, note Giri is winning his game, and Pomnyachi, those two, they're preparing for the candidates. They're in training mode, and it's really helping their chess.
Yeah, look at that. A dramatic round, and we do know the reason we're following this is because this could be over after this game if Magnus wins it.
Wow.
So let's say, okay.
Yeah, Magnus, just 2 moves ago, he brought his queen out from its start square to the left side of the board. Now, 2 moves later, he's brought it back to where it came from. Jovanka, I'm struggling to explain that logic. Help me out here, because that move, it's just blown my mind. Why bring your queen out if you're just going to retreat her 2 moves later?
That doesn't quite make sense. I mean, I totally agree with you there, David. No logic at all behind the move. I mean, all I can think of is that the queen perhaps wants to go over onto the right side, or perhaps he's kind of realised, I've made a mistake. Yeah. The queen doesn't belong there. She belongs in the middle of the board, flexible, and then he's going to try to swap off rooks. But I'm also slightly baffled, because I really would have thought that he would have locked down the position a little bit, because all he needs is a draw, and I was expecting him to perhaps, instead of going out with the queen, perhaps to kind of challenge the black rook using his own rooks, because this is something that Magnus himself likes to do. He loves to play with all his pieces, and he's not doing that right now. And I'm also concerned about the clock time, because Magnus is just under 4 minutes, whilst Levon Aronian has just under 11. That's a significant time of advance.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him just a few moments ago as well, Magnus shaking his head quite vigorously. He is not happy with how developments have been going in this game. He still got things under control, but he essentially did lose 2 moves there with his queen. Those moves could have been used more productively to get those white rooks into the game. Meanwhile, OK, black's rook under attack. I mean, imagine how much he'll be kicking himself if he somehow kind of makes a mistake under time pressure and allows Levon back into this match. I think, yeah, Magnus may be relaxing just a bit too soon with the food and just losing his rhythm.
Yeah, I mean, he's totally lost the rhythm. I mean, just look at it. I mean, Levon has been allowed to double his rooks on an open line, and Magnus, again, has no clear plan. But, you know, the unfortunate beauty of chess is that sometimes you can make a mistake and that's it, game over. And other times you can make a series of inaccurate moves and actually the position is still level.
Yep.
And I have a suspicion that it's probably the second case, which is actually apparent here, because yes, he's messed around with his queen, but ultimately a few correct defensive moves and Magnus is okay.
Yeah, the good thing for Magnus is, although he hasn't played in the most ambitious way, he's still got passive pieces. He lost those 2 moves earlier with that queen maneuver. Despite all of that, he still has no real weaknesses for white. And pieces are disappearing. We just saw the final set of minor pieces, the final set of bishops disappear, and the more pieces leave the board, the closer we get to a draw. So, yeah, he's taken real liberties in this game. He's done many things that I wouldn't advise to those starting out in chess. You don't want to bring your piece out and retreat at the next move, all of that stuff. But Magnus is Magnus, and he's still got things under control. Note that the white king is safe, and as long as that remains the case with the major pieces, the queens and rooks on the board, then white should be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Protect the king and everything will follow. That's a nice line that I learned today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing as well that I've learnt is in queen and rook end games, it's just all about king safety. Sometimes it doesn't matter if you're pawn down or 2 pawns down, sometimes even 3 pawns down. If you have the safer king, then you always have a chance. And yeah, Magnus with his last move, bring the rook up the board, attacking the black queen and attacking that black pawn in the centre. I am slightly surprised Aronian traded those bishops, I must admit, but OK. Aronian now can offer to trade queens. He can step his queen back. A few options for Levon. Who would you prefer here if you had to choose? I know it's roughly balanced, Jovanka, but...
Who would I choose? I probably would choose white. I mean, wow. Yeah, I would probably choose white, just because of the unsafe king. And I have to say, I do really like that tweet from Jafar87, which is all about having studied how, after studying his games, Levon Aronian comes up with a sound defense to Magnus Carlsen, the peanut counter gambit. Yeah, it's just in response to the noodle opening.
The cold salad opening today. Yeah, so...
What's your favourite salad type, David? Caesar salad? That's my favourite.
Salad with some crisps on top. I don't know.
I actually had that. Okay, so I hope my mom is not watching, but I traveled to England when I was a kid with my best friend. Her mom is from Wales, so actually I was in Wales.
Quarter Welsh.
Yeah. Oh, are you?
Yep. That was a Welsh name.
I love it there. But yeah, they served me like a sandwich with just chips on it, and I loved it.
We make unhealthy foods.
It's crisps
at least
or
look
chips?
good.
Chips. Like French fries?
Yeah, no, well, not French fries, but, you know, you have a bag of chips.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We say crisps.
Oh, okay, so that's crisps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So in US, they will say chips, right?
Yeah. Right.
Okay, crisps. So yes, a sandwich with crisps is what I had when I went to Wales.
My flatmate at university for 3 years, all he ate was a sandwich with crisps.
That's so unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, that's unhealthy, but at the moment, both of these players, their positions are pretty healthy. They both look fine. And,
good one.
Yep, trying to blend things in. But yeah, Levon Aronian, the reason he's thinking here with black is he's just looking for ways to imbalance things, to maybe set a trap for Magnus, just to force Magnus to be accurate before the game does head towards a draw. But OK, Levon Aronian, I don't think he found a direct path to create any threats. And now the queens have disappeared. White is temporarily a pawn up. But if you look at White's rook in the corner, it's very passive. So in rook endgames, just having more active pieces should compensate for the lack of a pawn. Levon Aronian, yeah, I think he should draw this game despite the fact he's a pawn down, but that won't be
That's not going to be sufficient. I mean, absolutely not. Then that means that Magnus will be half a point away from winning the match and going into the semi-finals. It's certainly not ideal.
And actually, the way it's looking right now, I know we don't have the games on the bottom here, but maybe we can get them up. So Jan Pomnyachi now has won 2 games. So if he only gets a draw in the next one, that will be over. He will be in the semi-finals. Wesley So, it's looking like he's winning against Alireza of Russia. Yeah, we see it there. And if he does, I guess he only needs a draw. Also in the next round to be through to semi-finals. It does look like Anish Giri is looking good against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. And I guess with that win and a draw in the next... No, he'll need another win.
He'll need another win.
Okay, so not 100% sure that we will be done after 3 rounds.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the biggest shock would be if there aren't tie breaks.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, these players, they're also good. They're also so close. But, OK, meanwhile, there have been some developments in this game. So a set of pawns have been traded. So remember, White is still a pawn up. White has 1 extra pawn on that left side of the board. But the problem is White's rook next to the White king, it is just so passive. Black's rooks are perfectly placed. This is where you want your rooks in rook and pawn endgames. You want them on the 7th rank. You want them behind your opponent's passed pawns. And sooner or later, White's extra pawn will drop. OK, Magnus just waiting with his last move, bringing the rook back. That doesn't really improve his position, but sooner or later, Levon, OK, there he goes. He's heading for that extra pawn. That White pawn is going to drop off. It's just going to be rook and 3 pawns against rook and 3 pawns. No chance to break through, not enough material left, and the game will be a draw. Look at this, it's completely balanced right now. And the players, they'll find a way to make a draw. Here we go.
I think we're going to see it. The pawns are going to get exchanged. And, yeah, this is just completely drawn. Nothing to see here, actually. Just the players will just be moving around their rook, and that's it. There's just no way to make progress.
Yeah, and the thing with rook endgames is there's no way to actually force a trade of rooks for either side. And if you avoid a trade of rooks, there's without passed pawns on the board, which will just run down to make a queen. Without those, there's just no way to win. So 2 pawns against 2 pawns on the same side is a very simple draw. And there we go. Draw has been agreed.
Magnus Carlsen shaking his head for the first time, not too happy about his game in this quarterfinal.
Yeah, he was quite unconvincing in that game, to be honest, but he is a step closer to the semis. So in the grand scheme of things, he will be relieved.
But look at Levon Aronian just making a plan now for what he's going to unleash against Magnus in that next game. It needs to be something winning.
Yeah, he has to win. I mean, that's it. There is nothing else that can actually suffice. And, yeah, well, what's he got? He's got the white pieces. That's in his favour. And he will simply have to take his opportunities when they present himself. This is the time now. He has burnt the bridge. He needs to go all in for the attack. Yeah. And the only way to do that, we've seen Dubov get the upper hand of Magnus. And he has to play in an uncompromising way and play to his strengths. Just do not take Magnus into an endgame. That's my big advice.
Yeah, because that has been Magnus's trouble in these days twos, David. Little bit of unfocus, and then it's downhill.
Yeah, it's as if he senses that the finishing line is just there, and then the closer he gets, the more he just stumbles, sometimes Magnus Carlsen, at least in the past. So far, he's looked pretty good. That last game, though, it wasn't a great sign for the world champion. Levon Aronian, he'll take confidence from the fact he was never in trouble in that last game, and now he is really in that nothing-to-lose situation. Levon Aronian will be throwing everything forward towards Magnus's king.
And maybe we can take a look at this game. I mean, it wasn't all that spectacular, but it was a little bit exciting in the opening here, and we did have some excitement.
Some excitement in the opening, and actually, for me, the most interesting moment was actually this point when Magnus decided to bring his queen out. Magnus's queen jumped out to this square, eyeing up one of Black's pawns, this pawn not currently protected, but after knight takes bishop, trade here, Black's rook dropped down, attacking White's bishop, and this is where Magnus Carlsen, already quite low on the clock, made a bizarre decision. He decided, okay, rather than move this bishop, rather than protect it with a rook, which is probably what I would have done, he dropped his queen back. The queen only coming from this square 2 moves ago, so Magnus just giving up those 2 moves for free, and he did look in a small bit of trouble after Black's queen jumped forward, later on potentially eyeing up this vulnerable pawn. However, Magnus, he stayed calm, and after some trades later on, especially when the bishops came off, especially when the queens came off as well, he guided this one safely towards a draw. Magnus not at his best, but it's been good enough.
All right. We will be looking at the third game with Levon Aronian and Magnus Carlsen, because we know Levon Aronian, there's no other result for him than a win. A draw or a win for Magnus means the quarterfinal is over. Magnus will be in the semifinals. All right, well, it's a short round, round 2 on day 2 quarterfinals. All games finished before they were played for 35 minutes, so that means we have a little bit of a break. And what I love to do in these breaks is to learn a little bit more chess from David Howell. We have made the Howell's how-to videos, and this next one is very excited. It's got a weird name. It's called the Smothered Mate.
In order to improve at chess, it's essential to study checkmating patterns. Often, the same patterns come up all the time. The patterns won't always be the same, so you have to recognize them instantly. And once you start to learn these patterns, your game will improve an enormous amount. One of the most popular patterns, the most famous patterns that will crop up, I guarantee, in your games is called Smothered Mate. This happens when a knight actually checkmates on its own. This is going to be one example of Smothered Mate. Smothered Mate tends to happen when a knight checkmates on its own. We call it Smothered Mate because actually the Black King here smothers itself, it suffocates itself, it has nowhere to run, blocked in by its own pieces and pawns. This is why it's Smothered Mate. The knight jumps in, giving check, and the Black King simply has nowhere to run. This usually happens in the corner of the board when the Black King is completely trapped, and here the White Knight delivers checkmate. This is what you're aiming for at the end. This is Smothered Mate, but the patterns building up to this tend to be familiar, they tend to be similar a lot of the time. So we will see what you should aim for in order to get this Smothered Mate. So in order to build up to Smothered Mate, this is one possible starting pattern. It normally begins with a queen checking the opponent's king. Here, the Black King is very vulnerable along this diagonal. It has only 2 squares to run to. It doesn't help bring the Black Rook forward because this Black Rook will simply get captured with the same check. Therefore, Black should choose from 2 possible king moves. The problem is, if he runs away towards the center, then often there's a very simple checkmate. The queen simply attacks the Black King, supported by this knight. The Black King is trapped and mated. Therefore, instead, the black king usually tries to hide in the corner. And this is the build-up. This is the start of the smothered mate. White gives a check. The black king, again, only has one square to run to. The black king has to step across. And now the key build-up, the key preparation for the smothered mate. You have to give a double check with your knight and your queen. With double check, the only thing the opponent can do is move the king. He doesn't have time to take one of the checking pieces because the other piece attacks the king. Once again, if the king steps to the side, this is checkmate. Therefore, the king should try and hide in the corner. And the final step to secure the smothered mate is to actually sacrifice the queen, to force the black pieces to suffocate, to smother its own king. White sacrifices the queen on this empty square, and when black captures this queen, we see this pattern again. Knight steps in, checkmate. The black king is trapped by its own pieces and pawns. So here is another example of smothered mate with an added element. Usually, the smothered mate does begin with the queen and knight. The queen will be the piece that sacrifices itself, but often you do need a bit of finesse. So, as usual, we check the black king along this diagonal. The black king has to step to the corner. Now we see the same idea. White steps forward with a knight, delivering check. And this time, there's a difference. Black can actually capture this knight, but now we see the added element. White can actually deliver a different checkmate. Back rank checkmate. The black king is also trapped in this scenario, and after the rook steps back, this is checkmate. This is why in the previous position, black has to step away with the king, or else walk into that back rank checkmate. The king steps to the side, and now once again the smothered mate pattern begins. Double check, the queen attacking the king and the knight attacking the king. The king has to hide in the corner, and this key sacrifice which you all have to remember. White sacrifices the queen, luring the rook to a bad square, boxing in its own king, and now the smothered mate. The knight delivers checkmate on its own. This is another example of a smothered mate from a real game, but this time the smothered mate is in a slightly different form. In this position, you can't actually start checking with your knight because the white knight here is pinned. The black rook would attack the king if this knight moved. Therefore, we have to find a different idea, and this time we start with the queen sacrifice, bringing the queen to this square. It cannot be captured by the king because the queen's actually defended long range by this bishop. Therefore, the black rook has to capture this queen. Now the pin is broken, and therefore we can deliver the killing blow with our knight. The knight is always the piece that delivers the smothered mate in the end.
All right, I'm just sitting here with my cup of coffee trying to learn, and this looked beautiful, I have to say. Is this basically the aim you have in any chess game, to just, you want to end up with this?
Yeah, it's one of the coolest, most satisfying mates to deliver, and especially when you're coming through the ranks. When I was young, for example, I got these all the time, and just recognizing that pattern, having the queen and knight combo, it will save and win you many games. But yeah, towards the top level, they tend to see it coming. That's the only problem.
Oh yeah, so we haven't seen it in this tournament?
No, unfortunately not.
No.
I know it's my favourite checkmate, actually. I mean, I really do like sacrificing my queen and just using my knight to deliver checkmate. And the beautiful thing about it is that the king is completely jammed in by its own pieces and it just can't get out. And I can't tell you enough how satisfying that is. I mean, it's like the height of evilness.
Fantastic. Well, we're so happy right now to be joined by international master Lawrence Trent from Berlin, actually. Are you in Germany, Lawrence?
I am in Germany, yeah. They won't let me back in home, so I have to stay out here. No, I've been here for a while now, and hopefully they'll let me stay in the country with Brexit going on and everything else. Who knows? Who
knows? So, Lawrence, what's your relationship to the smothered mate?
My relationship to the smothered mate? It's a metaphor for my life. That's my relationship. No, the smothered mate is, it's a beauty, as Jovanka and David say, you know, when you played chess for a very long time, you have lots of chances to get in this, mate, especially when you're younger. It is one of the most satisfying checkmates. It's aesthetically beautiful. And after all, we play chess because we're competitors. We like winning. But there's an artistic element to chess that if you spoke to all of these players, they would agree, that the aesthetic element, how positions look, is a big part of the pleasure we derive from the game. So looking forward to the next one.
Okay, I want to ask all of you a question. And this might be a super stupid question by a non-chess player, but is it sometimes hard to make a move because it just ruins the symmetry in like a beautiful position that you will have?
I would say yes, actually.
Nice.
I mean, sometimes everything's so picture perfect, you don't want to touch it. Unfortunately, we can't just like put up a beautiful position and say, look how beautiful it is, I win the game. We actually have to make a move, and it pains you to make that move. But that's absolutely true, that sometimes you have to put a piece on an ugly square, an awkward looking square. So there's certainly an element to that, I would say.
Do you guys have that as well?
Yeah, completely. Sometimes you just want to sit there and admire things, and in order to win the game, you actually have to give up your best piece. And yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah. Usually, I find the kind of the situation. It's I have a beautiful position, it's all perfect, but there's no way through, and so I have to make something, and so I pick up and I'm like, it pains me to make that ugly move, but okay, we do it.
Yeah. Well, Lawrence, we were joined by you in the last tournament in the Opera Euro Rapid, and we were talking about your sort of goal of becoming a Grandmaster. You're an international master. We've seen the story today about Magnus Carlsen becoming a Grandmaster at 13. Right. So I just want to check in. How's it going? I mean, there's no over-the-board tournament, so it must be hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit unfortunate at the moment because obviously the corona situation is... Well, it's actually getting worse over here. In Europe, we heard some news that I think France has put in some new lockdown measures. Germany's cases are going up daily quite seriously. They're well over the mark where they're thinking, if they're going to reduce the lockdown. So that's going to be one of the most difficult parts of this entire journey is actually being able to play. So at the moment, I haven't planned any tournaments or anything like that. I'm going to start a full regime very, very soon when things have really started to look like they're going to get back to normal-ish. Obviously, probably when I've got the vaccine as well, I'll feel a lot better. But yeah, it's just very unfortunate, the situation at the moment. It's just I can't see there being many tournaments happening in Europe for... if the situation gets worse. I mean, today was terrible. Who knows? And I'm going to need to play a lot of tournaments in order to get it. So that's going to be a big obstacle.
You said that you were doing you were going to start training very, very soon. But what are you doing now? What kind of foundation are you laying?
Well, I'm doing what everybody else should be doing, which is watching your broadcast. Okay, so everybody out there.
I hope you're learning.
So one big part of what I'm actually doing, which might surprise a lot of people, is fitness work. So getting back fit is actually quite a big thing. Suffered quite a lot during lockdown. I'm getting back to boxing, which is good. I've got my trainer so I'm back training with him. I run. I've actually just got delivered today some new running gear. So getting physically fit is, I feel like, the first thing I want to do now before I really get stuck into the chess stuff. And yeah, the chess stuff is of course the main part, but that comes in lots of different sections. But for the moment, I just feel like I want to get fit again, and I'm quite pleased with my progress. So that's the first stage.
There's always chess boxing, Lawrence, if the chess itself, if the Grandmaster title is elusive.
Well, it's funny you say that, but I am actually a member of the gym here in Berlin, where it all began, actually. There's a London division, but here in Berlin, the chess boxing gym and the chess boxing community is it's a really nice small community. And unfortunately, the gym is still closed. But when it opens again, I'll be going back and... it's a great spectacle, actually. I think that's a conversation for another day, but chess boxing really is a fantastic concept.
I want to watch that more.
Well, don't worry. Why watch it? Kaya, you're fit. I've seen you. You know, I can see you in the ring.
Maybe that would be my sport. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, what they're not telling you actually is that chess boxing is mainly boxers who have retired from the game and have picked up chess. So it's very rare that it's actually a chess player that decides, hey,
but I don't know, maybe I would
boxing.
be more a boxer than a chess player. I'm not quite sure.
On the board, Kaya.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what category I'm most.
How's your left hook, Kaya? Can you give us a left? Yeah, that's a decent straight left. Yeah, I like that you're covering the face.
Yeah, I learned
hands
that.
Are up. That's pretty good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's what you should do to these guys after the tournament to motivate them for the next.
I don't know if you've seen, Lawrence, the girls here, they've been bullying me into doing all these challenges. Maybe the next challenge should be Kaya with her chess boxing.
Well, actually, I want to try that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
You know what? I want to say congratulations. I did enjoy seeing you half naked, David. Also, then Jovanka, even, may I say. But I do want to see Kaya get involved. I think she's got it. She's got it good there, sitting in a nice chair, getting her coffee.
Just bossing around these two.
Yeah, bossing them around. I think it's time to put Kaya to the test. So all the producers out there listening, let's make it happen.
We're open to ideas, Lawrence.
Well, okay, I'm switching the subjects. I don't want any challenges. And, well, getting fit and all that, Lawrence, is it inspired by Magnus Carlsen, basically? Has he sort of made that a big thing in the chess world that, of course, your chess brain needs to work, but you also need to be fit?
Well, Magnus certainly has in recent times. Bobby Fischer was really the first guy who put it on the map. If you watch any documentaries about Bobby Fischer, I mean, he looked more like a swimmer than he did a chess player. He was in extremely good shape. Garry Kasparov as well. If you watch some old school clips of Gary, you'll see him working out at his random resorts with his Soviet trainers. And obviously then Magnus nowadays has been really the guy who has shown just how, not just important it is, but essential is the word I'm looking for. You cannot be the top of the top in the world now without having a high level of physical fitness. So himself, of course, and then I think of Fabiano Caruana, Fabi, who I worked with, as you know, for many years. The physical part of the regime was an extremely important part. And people might ask, well, why do you need to be fit to play chess? And the simple answer is, if you're going to sit there for 6 hours, 8 hours at a time and try and maintain a high level of concentration, you need to be fit. If you're not fit, you're just not going to be able to maintain that intensity. So that is a big part. And, long gone are the days where you're going to see, Kaya, you might not have even known this, but they used to smoke at the board.
I have seen some pictures. I have even saw cocktail glasses.
Yeah, they used to smoke at the board, drink, one fag in one hand, drink in the. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. Nowadays, you've really got to just have an athlete's body if you're going to compete, and there's just no other way.
We were born in the wrong era, Lawrence.
You could talk.
I mean, so we've got 8 very athletic, very physically fit chess players in the quarterfinal. Who's impressed you the most so far?
I have to say, I'm going to go to the champ, actually. The champ is back. He had a very underwhelming tournament last time around, didn't he? And he's back with a bang. He's absolutely crucifying Levon with black, with white. Levon's just on the ropes. Magnus looked good in the preliminary stage as well. And I think he wants to make a statement. Now, Magnus he doesn't like to lose. And it's not that he just doesn't like to lose. He doesn't like to underperform. That's his big thing. I think he hates underperforming more than losing. If he loses to a brilliancy, he'll just put his hands up and say, the guy played brilliant. But to play under his level is something that really annoys him. And this tournament, we've seen him just slowly get back to that level that we're very used to seeing him at. And he's impressed me. I want to say also that, I think Wesley has been very good. And Jan Pomnyachi. Jan, he's had a few moments where, he should have won this game, or he's kind of been under pressure. But he's managed to somehow turn things around at the right moment. So Jan as well has impressed me, Magnus. Ali Reza's not really shone at all in this yet, so he's got a lot of maturing still to do. And the Anish against Maxime match has obviously been very, very tight. But really, Magnus is the standout. And if he continues like this, he's just going to win the tournament, in my opinion.
Well, Lawrence, I actually want to ask you, because being the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, we are focusing a lot on Magnus and making the videos to sort of tell the story of Magnus Carlsen. And I keep seeing you in there when we keep talking about the 2013 World Championship match, commentating there. Your picture is always up there. And Magnus is keeps saying that sort of maybe that's his best ever World Championship match. Now, is that the level we're seeing from Magnus here now?
I don't know. It's difficult to say. I mean, is that his best ever? I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, it was the defining moment in his career when he became world champion. I had the honor to be there in India calling the action with my good friend Tanya Sachdev, who's also doing some commentary for this tournament, of course, part of the Play Magnus group. So Tanya and I and Susan Polgar and Ramesh were there teaching, which was, commentating rather. It was great. And I was actually there earlier in the year when he won the candidates tournament in London as well. So it was 2013 really was his year, and he hasn't been knocked off the top since. In terms of level, was it his best chess? I mean, it was, of course, very impressive. I don't think Vichy in that World Championship was aggressive enough. I think he was a little too passive and gave it a bit too easily to Magnus. I think Magnus has probably performed better in other World Championships, although they've all been very close. If we think of Karyakin and if we think of Fabi, maybe that was his best. But whatever way you look at it, what we're seeing now is Magnus Carlsen basically in fifth gear. And as anybody would say who knows chess, if he continues playing like this, there is no real match in this tournament. He's not really making huge blunders. He's playing some really fun chess as well. It looks like he's enjoying his chess. And I don't see anybody stopping him at this point.
All right. Well, finally, Lawrence and Ivanka, should we push him on the spot as we always do with the question of the day?
Let's do it. So, okay, we are asking everyone at home, what skills do you have, or perhaps aspire to have, that you are grandmaster level at?
Is that a question to me?
Yeah, that is the question.
What skills do I have?
Yeah.
Or that I aspire to have? Which one?
That it can be aspire to have.
Well, we do know that is chess. Aspire to have. So, do you have any other skills than chess, then, Lawrence?
That you're grandmaster level.
Yeah.
I'm a grandmaster, but does it have to be to do with chess or just life in general?
No. Yeah, life. So for me, for example, it's like Sudoku.
Oh goodness. I am a grandmaster level. This is like 5 p.m. right? So let's keep it friendly. I would say I'm a grandmaster level homemade lasagna maker.
Ooh.
Okay. So if you guys ever make it over to Berlin, if we ever get international again, and you do on-site tours and you're in Berlin, you're more than welcome. I'll do a veggie lasagna, a meat lasagna, whatever you want. Bit of salad, glass of wine, lovely jubbly.
Oh, I'm already looking forward to it.
Need to set up a date, Lawrence.
Yeah.
You're all invited.
Oh, thank you. Wow, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us and inviting us, Lawrence.
Thank you very much, guys. Keep up the good work. Obviously, big fan, as I said last time. You're doing a great job and exciting chess to come. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lawrence.
Cheers, Lawrence.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was exciting. And I'm looking forward to that lasagna. Any other great skills out there?
Yeah, there are certainly some great skills. We have a tweet from Paul R. who says, I guess I achieved a GM skill in tennis.
Wow.
Been playing for 8 to 9 years now, and these are my achievements. Although it says not many, but it's actually 2 trophies, which is 2 trophies more than I have than in tennis. It's actually, it's quite amazing. And that's always something. And we also have a skill from Josh, who says his GM skill is having the black belt at 11. and his second Dan belt at 13. Wow. Sadly, I don't train anymore, but at 21, I like to think I still got it. So certainly fantastic GM skill in karate. And then Vlad Muntin, who says his GM skill is cutting cherry tomatoes. You know, as someone who cooks occasionally, I can see that is a very, very impressive skill.
Absolutely.
Not to be sniffed at. And
very inspiring.
Yes. And Peter Illig has a skill and a proposition for David. He says, my GM skill is skiing. I'd love to trade David skiing and chess lessons. He did a great job on his first lesson. But wow, just look at that landscape. Yeah. You're very good at skiing, Kaya, as well.
No, at Norwegian level, just okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then also we have Len, who says that having laser-like vision is a grandmaster skill, curly hair notwithstanding. And yeah, those are some GM skills. And of course, the quiz of the day that we're asking is what skills do you have that you are grandmaster level at? And you can tweet your answer using the hashtag ChessChamps. We love to see them. We love even more when you show us your pictures. And one lucky winner wins an Airthings mini device.
Fantastic. Join in. Now let's take a look at the results from round 2 before we're heading into round 3. Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian played a draw. Magnus with a win in the next one will be through. Wesley So beat Alireza Varuzia, so a draw is enough for him in the next game. Pomnyachi now 2 wins. That means he only needs a draw in the next one. Anish Giri was able to beat Maxime Vagier-Lagrave. So that's going to be a super intense fight. All right, let's take a look at the game that we will follow now in round 3. It will be the game between Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian, because it could be over after this one. And we do know that Levon Aronian, he has to win this game.
Yeah, Levon Aronian, he will have the white pieces, but so far it hasn't gone well for him. There we see their head-to-head scores in the Champions Chess Tour so far. And Magnus Carlsen, he's got those 4 wins. 3 of them have come in this quarterfinal. Levon Aronian, yeah, it's last chance saloon. It's do or die time. He needs to win at all costs.
But I do love these situations because we always get very interesting chess when one player has to win the game, and that is the situation for Levon Aronian now with the white pieces. So definitely he could have the chances. And Magnus Carlsen, he's been looking very good so far in this quarterfinal, but a little bit of unfocus maybe in that last game.
Yes.
Sometimes that has meant a downhill for him. So what do you expect from the world champion?
I think that the last game was just a blip. I don't think that will affect Carlsen too much. He knows that this is the big one. Always when you have the black pieces, you just have this increased kind of awareness, this increased sensitivity to any danger. And Magnus, he's looked good with the black pieces so far. He won their first game, their first clash of the day with black. And yeah, he will want to just take all of the fun, all of the joy out of Aronian's game at an early stage if he can.
All right, well, we are waiting for the game to start. We do see that the 3 other games have started. And there we are. Is it a winning opening we're seeing?
We will see, Kaya. It is a King's Pawn opening. Levon Aronian, he started every game he's had with the white pieces against Magnus in this quarterfinal with these moves. It hasn't brought him any luck so far, but we will see. Okay, the Berlin defense.
He's playing it. David said it. He was going to try to kill the position right from the word get-go, or right from the word start. And you can see the moves are coming thick and fast. But having said that, you know, we did see Pomnyachi absolutely obliterate Hikaru Nakamura in the Berlin.
Yeah, so this opening is called the Berlin Wall because it's so solid, it's so hard to break down. That being said, the Berlin Wall did eventually fall, and sometimes this opening with black, it is possible to crack it from time to time. This opening with black became popular at the top level when Vladimir Kramnik used it to great effect against Garry Kasparov in 2000 to win the world title. Magnus Carlsen as well has used this opening with black in matches such as that one we mentioned earlier with Lawrence in 2013 in the World Championship against Anand. That being said, both players are actually experts in this opening as black. So it's interesting to see Levon go for it with the white pieces. I very rarely see him, Aronian, on the white side of this opening. Normally I see him with the black pieces. And I noticed that one thing has also happened that Ivanka, you said Aronian should avoid. The queens are already off. It's move 10. The queens have disappeared. You said Levon Aronian needed to avoid this one.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Magnus be incredibly impressive in the endgame. We've seen Magnus fall in Dubov's hands when the queens were on the board. He fell victim to a checkmate. I think it's a slightly risky kind of approach by Levon to actually go into this kind of territory.
It's the right approach. I mean, I would never even dream of going into this endgame against Magnus Carlsen in a must-win situation because the drawing margins are so high.
Right. I mean,
that's so solid.
That's kind of like the traditional methodology that I would be thinking about doing. I was like, OK, this is just too solid, not too many chances here. But, OK, let's assume that Levon has something in mind.
Yeah, Levon for sure. He must have something in mind, a very specific idea. But if we bring up the analysis board, the reason Magnus Carlsen is thinking right now while he wipes his eyes is because Black has so much choice. Black can develop this bishop, he can develop his other bishop, he can just push a pawn this square. So much choice for Black, no right or wrong. And that makes it very hard for the opponent to prepare any specific ideas. That's why I don't like it for Levon Aronian so much. Magnus Carlsen, his biggest problem with the black pieces is this king. It looks like it can castle later on, but remember, the king has already moved twice in this game. Earlier on, it captured a queen, and then it moved back to where it came from. So the black king, despite the fact it's in the middle right now, cannot castle the rest of the game. That means it's harder for Black to get the rooks in the game if the king is stuck in the centre. So some issues with piece development for Magnus Carlsen. Apart from that, though, it's all fine. Very solid pawn structure and the two bishops. That tends to become a factor later on. If Black can maintain those bishops while lots of other trades happen, then Black tends to be doing quite well. So White will be trying to look at the black king, take advantage of it, being in the centre, and maybe use his better pawn structure, Black having these doubled pawns, White, meanwhile, having an extra pawn, having a pawn majority on this right half of the board. This endgame, it's known to be super solid for Black, but Magnus Carlsen, he'll still need to be vigilant in order to guide this one to safety. I haven't seen Magnus use this opening for a while, actually. It normally tends to be against the very, very top players when he wants to draw.
Like in the World Championship match in 2016. But then, was it him or was it Sergei Karyakin who all the time sort of made the Berlin Wall?
Yeah, I mean, both of those players used the Berlin Wall, but in 2013, 2014 against Anand, that's when the Berlin was Magnus's main weapon. Against Karyakin, he started playing other openings, such as the martial defense, the martial attack, when it's slightly more combative. Magnus Carlsen, he's going back to what he knows best, his old opening repertoire. OK, he retreats his knight. This is actually my favourite move. Black going back with the knight, clearing the light squares for Black's light squared bishop to jump out a bit later on. But Aronian, he replies immediately. I've had this position before against some very strong players. It's just so solid for Black. I expect to see Black's knight jump out to a different square. Magnus just taking his time. He knows there's plenty of options for Black on every move.
So are you going to let us in on some Grandmaster secrets, David, and tell us what you have prepared here? What would you play as Black?
OK, let's bring up the board. I'm going to give away some secret analysis that I've done in the past. So with Black's last move, bringing the knight back, you have cleared the path for this bishop, but at the moment there's nowhere really great for it to go. So there's two moves that I would consider. Either bringing the knight back to where it came from, actually trying to trade pieces, trying to exchange White's knight. But I think there's a trap in this position. The other move I would think about is bringing the knight this way. This is probably the one I would choose, attacking this white pawn, and it's slightly awkward to defend. How does White defend this pawn? You don't really want to move this rook again. You don't want to bring it back where it came from, in the direction it came from at least. You don't really want to push a pawn at this early stage with White, because suddenly Black will develop with tempo. That means Black creates a threat and gets some piece development. You can bring your bishop out, attacking this rook. Next move, Black's rook will jump into the game. This is a bit awkward for White to deal with. So the move I would play is bring my knight to this square. OK, Magnus first does same idea. the other move order. He tries the other move first. He brings the bishop out, attacking this rook. I expect to see Levon Aronian kick this bishop back. The bishop will drop back either to this square or this square, but then black will centralize his rook.
Is this move a surprise to you, David? Because just looking at the database, I can see there haven't been too many games. You know, there's many games in the lines that you just showed just now. But here, maybe at the most 7.
Yeah, this last move by Magnus Carlsen, probably it's just influenced by the fact that Levon Aronian was playing instantly up to this point. So he decided to bring his bishop out and surprise Levon, get him out of his homework. So it does look like black's bishop is losing a lot of time, but there is an idea. He has cleared the path for that black rook. Later on, I think he'll have the same idea that I mentioned just a moment ago. He will try and bring his knight out to activate this bishop, which is kind of boxed in at the moment. So yeah, lots of ideas for black. It's just putting them together in the right order. Meanwhile, yeah, Levon Aronian, he needs to develop quickly because, as we mentioned, if pieces start to get traded, if black's able to keep his bishop pair, both the bishops on the board, then black is doing quite well. Okay, there we see. Okay, Magnus does retreat his bishop. So for those of you at home who are wondering why Magnus moved his bishop out, allowed Levon to push a pawn and then dropped his bishop back, it looks like Magnus has lost a move. But the move that Levon Aronian has gained from that maneuver is a pawn move which doesn't necessarily improve his position. It does maybe weaken a diagonal towards the white king that Magnus will try and utilize a bit later on. Very, very deep stuff here. No doubt the players have studied similar ideas before. This Berlin Wall opening, I mean, I dread to think how many hours I've spent in my life studying it. I remember I had a book when I was young on the Berlin Wall by John Cox, and I used to kind of pore over it just by candlelight almost, just
really?
Day in, day out. Yeah, day in, day out when I was first learning the opening, because I think I was, 13 years old, and I had no coach, and I decided on my own for some reason. I mean, I don't advise kids to learn this opening because it's too dry, but I decided myself I needed something more solid, and that was how I learnt originally.
And I have a question for you. Did you actually do your studying with a chessboard, or were you too lazy or clever enough to just simply visualize the moves?
I mean, I'm lazy in general, but at that time, I think I was quite disciplined. When I was 13, 14, I always had a chessboard with me. I used to pack a chessboard in my luggage going to every tournament. These days, I'd rather have some clothes or some chocolate in there. But yeah, in those days, yeah, my visualization has always been quite good, but it's been maybe... it's improved because I put things on a board originally.
It was quite interesting, because I was talking to another grandmaster, and he said that his visualization skills were amazing because as a kid, he used to love reading chess books, but he was too lazy to pick up the board. And so he followed absolutely everything in his head. I kind of grew up with computers, so I tried to do everything on the computer.
Okay.
I wasn't very good at reading books.
Okay.
And I mean, what I like to do with books is I just love to... I'm a bit of a magpie. I just read one chapter, think this is amazing, maybe read 4 chapters, and then before I know it, I've picked up another book, and I'm like, wow, this book is going to take me all the way to Grandmaster level. And I read 4 chapters, and then I've lost interest, and then I go on to another book.
Yeah. But what happens if that 5th chapter, that was the key?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? I don't know why I do this. I mean, I have to set myself the concrete goal of finish 1 chapter per day. Then I can do things. But my natural instinct is just to have...
To jump around,
which is not ideal. I don't do what I did.
Different things work for different people, so maybe it works for you, but...
Yeah. Are you still aiming to become a Grandmaster, Jovanka? Is that, or...
Well, it was actually my ambition before the lockdown happened. And I hired a trainer. I was working with some people, and I was making some radical changes and working like I'd never worked before. Then because when you do this, you often go through a period of adjustment where you get used to these changes that you're making, and you get used to kind of like the focus and everything. And so my rating dipped down to the lowest it's ever been, and I lost quite a lot of points. And then coronavirus struck, and I was like, what can I do? I have no chance to gain back those rating points that I really want to gain. And
are you actually then kind of anxious for when over the board chess resumes and to see the level you're at? Because I guess it's not easy to compare it completely to what you're doing online.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely anxious to kind of have over-the-board chess resume. There's still a few important tournaments that I have in my calendar, especially those to do with women's tournaments, because that's going to take you to the next level.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, there's talk about there's a big Grand Swiss that's going to happen where the 100 of the best women like battle it out to be in the candidates. So, you know, if that goes ahead and I do get a spot in that top 100 women, then I'm definitely will be there to fight for my place in the candidates. So, yeah.
Exciting times ahead. Yeah.
You'll have that chance, Jovanka. You'll have that chance too.
Yeah, you know, I have daily trailing with with David, who's giving me lots of insights. And I must say, following these top players in the world, it's very inspiring. And especially when I'm looking at these games and I'm trying not to use my engine. Okay, occasionally I can see the bar, and so that's a big spoiler alert for me. But you know, it is good practice to try to predict and try to think about what these players are going to play. And yeah. But I mean, it's super exciting, you know, to have that possibility to be a GM, a grandmaster or something.
It must be. That's such an exclusive club to be a part of.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's interesting to have that, like a grandmaster skill at life.
Yeah.
I do really like our quiz of the day.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd happily trade my grandmaster title for Lawrence's skill of being able to cook.
Cooking is easy. The cooking is easy.
It takes time.
What's your specialty then, David?
My specialty dish?
Yeah.
An omelette, I don't know. Nothing too complicated. Okay, meanwhile, Levon Aronian has pushed a pawn. That's just kind of planning in advance. He just wants to gain a bit of space. Maybe that pawn's going to continue pushing. A slightly mysterious one for me. I'm not sure it's the most useful move right now, but it does keep the white options open. So later on, white will decide where to place his bishop, where to maybe start advancing his king. I would have been very tempted to start advancing my king with white or bring the bishop out. But OK, Levon pushes a pawn. I've noticed that most of the top grandmasters, they play this move sooner or later, so I won't fault it. Meanwhile, Magnus brings his knight back to where it came from a few moves ago, but now he is just trying to get rid of those knights. I did mention it earlier. If you can keep the two bishops on the board as black in this type of position, then you tend to be doing pretty well, especially if the rooks disappear as well later on. Yeah, I think good move by Magnus Carlsen. I should also mention, when I was 11 years old, I had the chance to play Kramnik, who was the world champion at the time, and in a series of blitz matches. And I knew he would play this opening against me. It was kind of his calling card at the time. And when I had the white pieces, I did some training matches. I kind of planned in advance, but I didn't understand the subtleties. I let him keep the bishop pair until late in the game. But OK, I would have lost to him anyway. He was too good. But yeah, that came back to haunt me in this exact opening. So especially black's light squared bishop, you can maybe if we bring up the analysis board, we can see why Levon Aronian actually retreated this knight. He did not go for this knight trade because especially this light squared bishop is not challenged. White earlier had traded his light squared bishop. So this bishop is the most important piece right now, and it has targets. This pawn is always going to be a weakness later in the game. You can imagine this pawn becoming a weakness as well later on. That's how I lost those games to Vladimir Kramnik. He traded every single piece off, but he left himself with this light squared bishop, and that's what cost me those games. That's why Levon Aronian, in the current position as well, refused to trade knights. He dropped his knight back, meaning that this bishop can't reach its dream squares right now. All of these ideas, they come up time and time again in this opening. Now I expect Magnus to bring his bishop out, maybe give a check, or to bring his rook across. It's time to activate some pieces for Magnus. Yeah, no, I love what you said about the light square bishop, because this is like this epitome of secret knowledge, of really understanding the position. Because often, like you said, you'll play this position and you just be like, OK, I'll just do this, I'll make some trades, level, and then you have an issue like the light squared bishops suddenly become a monster, and you end up losing without a chance. Yeah. And OK, there's been some progress here. We had a little check, and the white king has taken a step towards the centre. And maybe a big decision here for Magnus Carlsen. Would you give a check with your knight here, Jovanka, or would you not get tempted for black? No, I don't think I would give a knight check there. I think I would just concentrate on development.
Yes, I mean, there's one issue that does concern me, and I think it always concerns every player when they're playing on the black side of this Berlin. It's basically how are you going to move the dark squared bishop once it's attacked? So if I make the most natural move to me, which was simply to step forward with the king just to connect the two rooks, then white will challenge my bishop, and then, oh my goodness, I might have big problems.
Yeah, so if you step forward with the king to connect these rooks, as you say, Jovanka, there's maybe two issues here. One is that the knight will step forward, harassing this bishop, which doesn't have too many good squares, but maybe the more urgent problem is that there is a check in the position, and the black king might even have to step back. That's why Magnus Carlsen, first he pushes a pawn. So he's clamping down on the right side of the board. He's stopping any potential pawn push, kicking away his strong knight. So this is a really nice move, this pawn push, solidifying his knight on this square. It's going to be almost impossible for white to kick back that knight to remove it. The other move I think Magnus was considering in this position is to drop his knight forward, giving check. And many people might be tempted to do this because now you have two bishops against two knights. But you lose a bit of time with black, and actually the knights are pretty decent in these types of positions. White would gain time against this bishop, the bishop drops back, and gain a bit more time against the other bishop. Look at these rooks now lining up. So Magnus Carlsen playing what I think is a really nice move, just pushing his pawn forward. You could even imagine this pawn dropping further forward and causing some chaos. Instead, the knight drops forward and the bishop drops back.
Yes. Yes, it's like the moment to trade the knight for the bishop has gone, actually. So definitely very, very interesting kind of opening so far. Like black is in a shell, kind of like really trying to hold and restrain white's activity. Meanwhile, white is simply just trying to make some improvements. So it's very much a reactionary opening. You don't really tend to do anything, right?
As black?
Yeah. You're always just reacting.
Yeah.
And doesn't necessarily matter with connecting the rooks. That doesn't matter. What I've learned is that just make some moves.
Yeah, keep everything protected.
Exactly.
Try and frustrate all your opponent's plans.
And seize space with pawns in order to protect your knight.
Yep. And the other thing I should mention about these types of positions, these types of queenless middle games that arise from the Berlin Wall, is that computers are not to be trusted. The main reason that Vladimir Kramnik became world champion is because he used this opening as black every time he played Garry Kasparov in that world championship match. And Garry, he was famous for using computers to his benefit. But computers, they struggle to understand these types of positions. They often give white a small advantage. Here we see that white has a 0.3 advantage according to the computer. But actually, it doesn't show any plans. Computers struggle to come up with the right plans, or very non-human plans at least. And black's position, because it is so solid, it has no real weaknesses. It often becomes easier to play if white oversteps. So sometimes players, when I play this opening as black, if my opponents have studied with the computer and they've memorized some lines, sometimes they'll reach a position and they suddenly think, they suddenly realize there's nothing else to do. I've followed the computer, I've pushed everything forward, I've committed myself, but what next? And computers, I think, even though they're so strong nowadays, they still struggle sometimes in these types of position.
Yeah. Do you know, actually, I have to show you guys one picture. It's by Stephen Wright. He earlier tweeted and entered into our Quiz of the Day competition. And he said that his grandmaster skill was looking after his sick dog. And he later tweeted, here's a picture of Louis dressed up as a cowboy for Halloween.
That's so cute.
That's so adorable. And I also have a question for you, David.
Oof. Okay.
Yes, it's actually, it's a very personal question. It says, it's from Ibrahim Shahzad, and it says, what is your score against Magnus Carlsen? He's just curious.
Oof. I mean, in official games, I think we've had a few draws, 3 or 4 draws, and I lost the last 2 games that we've played over the board. Actually, one of my favourite games was in 2009 in the London Chess Classic when I played Magnus. He was #1 in the world at the time. And I was a grandmaster, but I was under 2,600. So I was the bottom seed in the tournament. He was the top seed. And we played one of the longest games I've ever played. At one point, I actually blundered a piece in one move, and he didn't see it. But that was one of the craziest, most enjoyable games I've ever played. We've also played each other many, many times, like friendly, online, over the board, blitz games. And there, he's quite a lot ahead as well. I think a few months ago, during the lockdown, the first lockdown in the virus, we played online and he won, I think, around 45 points to my 15, so it was like...
But it was good training, because you then went on to win the Hastings online, you won Bunratty online. Well, speaking of Bunratty, we do have to wish all our Irish viewers a happy St. Patrick's Day, yes.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And your dress is chosen for this occasion, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I deliberately chose something green, just in honour, It's quite funny because now that I'm living in Norway, that I've become even more homesick for things and celebrations.
And this year, I mean, celebrations, bring them on. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day. I hope you get to celebrate, at least a little bit, with your families. And
not too much Guinness.
A little bit is allowed.
A little bit is allowed. Okay, so meanwhile, we do see Levon Aronian. I really like what he's doing actually right now. Look at those white knights. They are finding good squares. They are looking towards outposts. And the other thing that White has done over the last few moves is he's kind of initiated this trade of dark squared bishops. And usually long term, this does favour White. You have to time it correctly. You don't want to allow Black's pieces to get too active while you trade those dark squared bishops. But remember, bishops work best as a pair. So what Levon Aronian is doing, he's just put those bishops looking at each other. He's going to say, OK, at the right moment, I'll trade those guys off, and you will no longer be with that pair of bishops. You will just be stuck with a bad king as Black and the worst pawn structure.
Yeah. And by worst pawn structure, perhaps we should bring up the board and show them that basically White's dream is to eliminate all the pieces on the board. And the whole point is that, David, take it away. What is going to be the winner?
The winner will be this pawn. If you divide the board in half, you just see that White has this 4 versus 3 advantage on this side of the board. It's easy to make if you imagine all the pieces disappearing, I know it's difficult, but if you visualize all of the pieces disappearing, all the pawns remaining, it's easy for White to make a passed pawn. In a king and pawn endgame, White will win because simply, especially this pawn, will be the winner. Black, on the other side of the board, has a 4 versus 3 advantage. But if you look at Black's pawns here, especially these guys, they are doubled. So actually, in a king and pawn endgame, in a pure endgame like that, with no pieces on the board, it's just impossible to create a passed pawn. These two are not necessarily better than White's 1. So long term, White is winning. But there's a long way to go before that. And talked about long too much, and Magnus Carlsen did not have a long think, and he's traded pieces. I'm not so sure I like that. You remember I highlighted the fact that Black had his light squared bishop as a potential trump later on in the game. Meanwhile, though, his idea, Magnus, is to try and trap this white rook. It's actually lacking squares in the middle of the board. Magnus Carlsen with 2 ideas: to take this pawn and to maybe push forward to take this rook. This one is getting tense already. I really like what Levon Aronian's doing. If he can somehow save his rook, then White has a big advantage.
Well, now we've got the board up. Maybe we can look at ways of saying, OK, well, we don't have to because Levon Aronian has provided the answer for us. He's just going to attack the knight. Now, what's going to happen if there is a counter-attack, though? White's, Black says, you attack my knight, I attack your rook. Ta-da!
I think there's actually only one move for White to keep the advantage here, and it's a really, really nice move. White should just... This rook attacked, White should just step forward, sacrificing this rook on a square. It can be captured, but now White would jump forward, and the key thing is that it's check. So when Black loses time moving his king, White will capture the knight in the centre, and knight and bishop, they will outmatch a rook. So White would be winning in this case. So after White would step his rook forward, I think it's time for Magnus to move this knight, and he would be in a bit of trouble. OK, he decides not to do this. Instead, he just retreats his knight immediately.
But this is wasting time.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw it again in the second game that, he wasn't necessarily the most precise. It wasn't actually critical because the game ended in a draw. And he was never in any serious danger. But here we see again, the knight steps forward, gets kicked back, knight retreats.
Yep.
Small things.
Yep, you're
Maybe
right.
the butterfly effect.
Yeah, a series of small... I mean, this is what you have to do as White. You'll never crash through immediately. You'll never give checkmate. You'll never immediately kind of create a passed pawn and win the game. But you just have to kind of collect this series of small advantages, and you hope that they add and build up towards something a bit bigger. And here, White still has the better pawn structure. White has the more active pieces. I would be... OK, White first has to deal with his bishop. I would be tempted to just retreat that. I would not go for the trade right now because actually Black's dark square bishop is a bit locked in. It doesn't have an amazing future. So I would retreat my bishop right now and just ask Magnus, what are you going to do? Remember, black's king cannot castle. It's already moved. So it just gets in the way of the black rooks. And there's some problems to solve.
Well, there you go. And this is the questions. This is what Magnus is saying. OK, fine, you retreat the bishop, but now there is going to be a rook trade. Would you take that rook or would you just pile on? So that's what Levon has chosen to do. He has doubled his rooks. And I guess after the trades, it's all going to hinge on how Levon can carry on improving his position. I mean, I think that Levon has played this perfectly.
Yeah.
It's a risky opening choice because this opening is known for being so drawish, but I mean, he is gaining, I wouldn't say significant, but a kind of a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it's lots of small things that just add up to one bigger thing. And for Magnus, I think the problem is how to activate that rook in the corner. That black rook, I mean, it wants to somehow leapfrog over the black king to trade itself off, but it's not easy to do that. Magnus trying to lengthen the scope for that black rook by pushing a pawn. I would just ignore that if I were Levon Aronian. I would start pushing some other pawns quite possibly. And
which pawns would you push? Would you push the one that's in front of the king?
Yeah, I would push the pawn in front of my king right now.
Yeah, and he's done that. Yep. We're very good with the crystal ball today, aren't we?
It's logical as well. Not only do you threaten to push that pawn even further up to kick away the black knight, but you also just create a square for the king. White's king might step up. Actually, I expect that right now. White's king to step up one square. Often the king that can get to the centre of the board quickest in the endgame, will often win the game.
And maybe it is the round for comebacks. It is looking quite good for Levon Aronian in this game. And look on the bottom, the bar is slightly over to Hikaru Nakamura's side. He does need a win in that game to have hopes of taking it to tiebreaks. And Alireza Firouzja as well, I can see on the bar, slightly over to his side. And he as well needs to win both of the two last games, actually, to take it to tiebreaks.
Wow, yeah.
Maybe.
I just took a sneak peek at both those games. Crazy stuff. Anything could happen in both of those ones. So although Nakamura and Firouzja have small advantages, anything could change. Everything could change in 1 minute.
Exciting round. And it is looking good for Levon Aronian. Is it so good that you could almost predict a win for him, or is it far away?
It's still far away, the win, but every move he's slowly growing his advantage. He's just he's pushed all the white pawns. He's getting ready for that potential race. Endgames, they're all about races. It's all about creating those passed pawns. He's trying to kind of just suffocate Magnus Carlsen. Magnus, how many times has he moved that knight? Maybe this is one for the viewers. Try and count how many times he's moved his knight in this game. But Magnus, he's been dancing around with his knight. That black knight still hasn't found a great square, though. Meanwhile, look at Levon. He's just protecting everything. He's activated the white king, white's rook, white's knight, bishop. They're all perfectly placed right now. The more I look at it, the more I think actually Magnus is in big trouble. And if Levon wins this, his opening choice will look inspired. I think it was just kind of playing on the fact that Magnus was maybe a bit too eager to force things, too eager to get to the finishing line and make that draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And good opening preparation. I mean, he's definitely chosen the right strategy. I mean, I'm kind of curious about Levon Aronian because he has performed actually tremendously in previous events, and then now it has looked a little bit shaky. Okay, not taking away from Magnus, but we do actually have a question from Max Curie. He says, is biorhythm an issue in chess? And he likens it, says, it seems like some days Max cannot lose a game, other days he's a serial blunderer. And I've seen that happen to the pros too. What do you think, David?
Biorhythm.
That's
a new word for me.
That was a new word for me too. So it's a pseudo-scientific idea that our daily lives are significantly affected by rhythmic cycles with periods of exactly 23, 28 and 33 days.
Wow.
Whoa.
So,
deep stuff.
Yeah, it was deep for me too. So I was hoping that you'd have the answer.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, often results are affected by just your kind of state of mind, your happiness, your routine. If you've got something kind of on your mind, if you've got something going on that you're not happy with, then it will affect your results. It will affect your game. And yeah, I share that sentiment, Max. So there are some days I feel unbeatable. I can't explain it, and I wish I could. Wish I could bottle up that feeling and sell that magic ingredient. But yeah,
I saw an interesting article about this that you should actually focus on your results and study your results according to what time you've played the game.
Oh.
So if you've played the game in the morning and you kind of look at the pure statistics and you're like, okay, I do really, really well in the morning, you should only play online chess in the morning. And I was like, okay, I have never, ever thought like that at all.
Yeah. I mean, the reason my online results have been quite good lately is because, okay, firstly, I've switched to a mouse rather than a touchpad. But yeah, I've been much more disciplined with when I play and how much I play in one go. I used to just play hours and hours a day without thinking about my body clock or without thinking about nutrition and all that stuff. But yeah, nowadays I only play if I'm feeling fresh, feeling good. Nice. I've already slept 8 hours. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about biorhythm, but definitely just being in a good place helps the chess results.
Yeah, and if you have any questions or you want to share any pictures with us, please tweet us using the hashtag #ChessChamps. We really do love it when you join in the fun and join in the conversation. And there's been a few advances actually in the position, because we can see that Levon Aronian's king, well, it has made a spacewalk and is now looking mighty impressive there on the right side.
Yeah, that king has its running shoes on. The white king is trying to just kick back the black rook, but also support the advance of the white pawns. If we bring up the analysis board, we can see this king doing a great job right now. It has forced the black rook to a worse square, but you still need to find a new plan for Levon Aronian, because ideally you want to push this pawn forward, but if you push it forward now, it does allow a capture in the centre of the board. You lose protection of this pawn. That is why Levon Aronian, he's trying to insist on pushing his rook up to defend this pawn, but we've seen it from Magnus Carlsen before. In a very similar position, he's attacked this rook, trying to kick it away, and when that rook moves back, the knight drops back, so Magnus begging for a move repetition. What I would do here for Levon Aronian in a few moments' time, he can repeat the position first once or remaneuver slightly, but what I would recommend is rerouting this knight. Bring this knight back, and no matter what black does, I mean, black's lacking moves already, no matter what black does, just jump the knight into this square. Keep an eye on this pawn, and now reroute the king to the centre. Kings love to be in the middle of the board. The king will defend this pawn, and then the pawns will start running. I think this is the plan, if Levon Aronian finds it, that will give him a huge advantage. Meanwhile, Magnus just trying to make life as difficult as possible for him, trying to harass his pieces. He gives a check, white's king has to step back. Yeah, Levon's in control. Magnus is just in kind of damage limitation mode. He's just trying to make, just trying to maybe set some traps, just trying to discourage Levon Aronian from finding the right plan.
Oh, I really did like your plan of rerouting the knight, because that was the move that I wanted to play. So anything that coincides with that. But I agree with you, David. I mean, he has to find an orchestrated way of using every single piece on the board just to advance those pawns and just to kind of squash black.
Yep. Black, if you notice Magnus Carlsen's last, what is it now, almost 10 moves, he's done nothing. He's just moving up and down, up and down. He's waiting. He's just kind of curled up into a ball and said to Levon, I bet you can't get through. But Levon, okay, what I do like about what Levon is doing is he's just also manoeuvring slowly, improving his pieces step by step and playing quickly. Magnus down to 2 minutes. And this position is so hard to defend for black when you're low on time. I mean, it's human instinct as well to lash out, to do something. It's not human instinct to sit and wait. So it's going to be difficult for Magnus Carlsen.
And he has less than 2 minutes on the clock now.
Yeah. Difficult position on the board, bad situation on the clock. The Magnus that we've been praising so much in these quarterfinals, not really had it. He's not really shown it in this game, at least.
Yes. Well, it's kind of a continuation of what's happened in Game 2, because Game 2 we saw him hesitating, using a lot of time on the clock. But there he had the white pieces, now he has the black pieces. And, well, that usually follows with some kind of uncomfortableness when you're kind of taking those slight inaccuracies, when you're making those bad moves.
Yeah, and I know we were laughing about the food and the salad he was eating and everything, but it does feel like somehow it's just slowed him down, and maybe it's just that digestion, but he's lost his rhythm, and wow.
Oh.
Okay, Magnus Carlsen, he I mean, he's sacrificing a pawn. He's got an idea in mind, but I think that idea is faulty. I don't think it quite works. And there's actually almost a winning idea here for Levon Aronian. Look at that. Stockfish, the computer, says white only has one move. Not just one move to win, but also one move not to lose. White has to play bishop takes knight right now. That black knight in the center of the board giving check. White has to take it. Levon Aronian.
Is it a human move? Is it something he will...
The most obvious move.
Okay.
But it's the follow-up that's difficult.
Let's put it up on the board and let's show it because it's looking... OK, we're going to see it.
Yeah.
So bishop takes knight.
And how does Magnus react to this?
Yeah, this is his reaction. He has pushed his pawn to attack Levon Aronian's rook. Now, what is the way for Levon to escape this?
Yeah, the good thing for Levon Aronian, as we see below the players there as well, he has 3 good moves and all of them maintain the advantage. One move may be better than the others, but it's not the most obvious one. I think there are 2 other moves which maintain the advantage, or a good enough winning advantage, which are much more natural, which are much more human. So here, White's rook is trapped, but he can just ignore it. He can just move back the white bishop and just say to black, OK, you can take my rook, but those white pawns in the center are going to be so strong, they're going to be scary, you can't deal with them as black. I think Magnus Carlsen, I did mention it, he lost patience. It's really hard to just sit still and hope for the best. OK, Levon Aronian, he finds the best move.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, now, look at those 2 white central pawns. They're so advanced. Black has an advantage in terms of rook versus knight, but the black rook, it's on a bad circuit. It doesn't have any active squares, any open lines. All Levon Aronian needs to do now is retreat his bishop. He can even trade those bishops off, to be honest. I think the white knight combined with those white central pawns should overpower the black rook. What would you do here, Jovanka? Retreat that bishop, trade?
I would think I would retreat the bishop.
Yeah, same.
I would treat it just to kind of keep an extra piece to attack because those central white pawns, they are amazing. And when they go forward, I want there to be extra pieces to back it up.
Yeah, and I think both of these players, they will sense that white is winning, but there isn't, I mean, it's not over. There's still some life. There's still some hope for Magnus Carlsen because if somehow the black rook does get active, if you imagine the black rook kind of going on a long journey and kind of getting behind white's position, then the rook will simply be dominant and the rook will win the game. So Levon Aronian, not only does he have to keep control of the position, but he has to make sure that that rook doesn't enter. OK, Levon Aronian, he's ahead on time slightly, so that is another reason he should win this game. But he has to keep his rhythm up. He's found some incredible ideas. He's found all the right moves. I can't fault any of his moves, actually, Levon Aronian in this game, but he needs to keep it up.
What a comeback it seems to be by Levon Aronian. And we did see on the bottom of the screen, Maxim Vajilagrav and Anish Giri, they played a draw. And that means that MVL, he has to win the last game to take it to tiebreaks. Exciting stuff. All right, we have another move.
Yep, Levon Aronian, as we predicted, he keeps his bishop. I did notice the computer wanted to trade those bishops off, but I think that would have increased the risk factor. So dropping his bishop back, yeah, very logical. Look at White's kind of the 4 central squares of the whole board. They're occupied by White's pieces. That's a really nice formation. Those 2 white pawns leading the charge. That's how it should be in any battle. Your foot soldiers go first. Your kind of cavalry and artillery goes afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah, this is perfect setup for Levon Aronian.
Yeah.
Magnus, OK, pushing the rook forward 1 square. He's just trying to stop the further advance of White's pawns, but I think that's just a temporary
Yeah, I mean,
measure.
just look at the black rook. It's not really doing anything. It's on the corner of the board, no mobility, no nothing, and everything's going to hinge on those white central pawns. So how would you play this position with the white pieces? Would you simply improve your pawns, or would you just go now?
Good question, Jovanka. Difficult question. If we bring up the analysis board, we can see just the reason White is better. Material is level. White has a knight and 2 pawns for a rook, so that's 5 points each. So material is level, but these 2 pawns are so strong. I would try and maneuver first. Maybe one idea is to actually just bring the king round. I know it's a long journey, but White's king, if it can come round, and it will support the advance of White's pawns. I'd be tempted as well to push the king forward, to attack this rook to try and support the advance of this pawn. But Black will kind of stymie this idea by pushing his pawn forward, and it's not clear what to do next. So
what about rerouting the knight?
He does this.
Okay, so
now it's time to reroute this knight. You're right, Jovanka. There's no rush as well. Levon Aronian, he can maneuver his pieces around before he starts pushing. The one cardinal sin here would be to push these pawns too soon. They will just become weak.
Okay. So
I like your idea. Reroute this knight somewhere, maybe round this way first.
Yes, I wanted to tickle those pawns on the left side of the board. I wanted to ask them exactly. I wanted to ask them what are you going to do? How are you going to defend them? Because the more pawns I collect, the more winning it is.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. Do not push those beautiful central pawns too early. So Levon, of course, he's actually, he took a step forward with his king. He took a step backwards. Is this critical?
No, I think that's actually quite nice. He didn't find the right idea immediately, so he just took a step back, and now he's rerouting his knight. Look at this knight move. He just wants to maybe bring his knight forward, put his king in the centre. This is what I was kind of advocating a few moves ago. And once his king is in the middle, then it will start being time to push forward. Levon Aronian taking his time on the board, manoeuvring his pieces to the right squares, and it will just come down to the fact that this rook, it's offside, it's not doing anything, it's much worse than white's knight and pawns. Levon Aronian is still continuing to play, extremely impressive chess. The move is back on Magnus, about to go under 1 minute. Mm-hmm. It's back to a situation where he has to sit still again. There's just no productive ideas for Magnus. He attacks the white knight. That knight will move. That knight will jump forward, but black is stuck.
He cannot move his rook. I guess he just has to move his king back and forth.
Yeah.
And just hope for the best. I mean, sometimes this is okay because at least it means you're not consuming time on the clock. And Levon is doing everything by the rule book. He has maximized his bishop, his knight, and now the king is in the center. Everything is in beautiful place. This is like the position that you were talking about, Kaya, where it's like everything's beautiful.
So you just don't want to touch it.
But you don't win the game by being beautiful. You have to win the game by more concrete things. So, David, how would you improve the black position? The white position.
Yeah, that's difficult. It's so perfect right now. White's king, bishop, and knight on perfect squares. OK, I like that move. Levon Aronian drops his bishop back, keeping an eye on black's pawn there on the corner. Yeah, you're right, Jovanka. In order to win this one, you have to give up a bit of control. And that's, in practical terms, a difficult thing to do. OK, Magnus Carlsen.
Well, maybe this is a helpful move, actually, because that pawn is by itself. And we actually saw Magnus win a game against Levon yesterday because he just was really reckless with his pawn advances and the pawn was unsupported.
Yeah.
Potentially.
So Magnus now, he's offering a trade of bishops. I'm not sure Levon should go for that. He can go for it. He can take those bishops off the board, but he has to calculate perfectly because if the bishops came off, there would be an open line for black's rook.
Yeah, exactly. I think you want the bishop on the board just to keep control. Mm-hmm. I think you hit it on the nail there because ideally I want to actually pick up one of my pawns on the right side and just push it forward.
Yep.
So that there's a wall of 3 girls. Kind of Kaya nicknamed them mean girls.
Yeah.
Great analogy. A row of mean girls are going to cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, if we bring up the analysis board just while Magnus has a quick think, no matter what black does, what can black even do? He's completely stuck. Kaya, you'll love this pawn formation. Look at these 3 white pawns. They are ready to just march forward to make a new queen. OK, Magnus Carlsen, he's in desperation mode. He didn't want to look at these pawns. He pushes a pawn on the other side, just trying to get his rook active, trying to bring his rook across. But I think it's too little, too late. I think it's time to start pushing these pawns, and white will be winning. I think it's just too slow for black. You could also, if you want to be kind of a bit clever about it, you could push a pawn forward, try and block the black rook and gain a bit more time to get these pawns rolling. These guys, these mean girls, they're going to win the game for white.
Yeah.
The mean girls, they're back.
They are back.
That's a scary gang there of pawns.
Totally is, because they're on the black side of the board. By the black side of the board, I mean the top half. I kind of split the board in quarters. OK, so Levon has actually manoeuvred his knight.
You're not such a fan of that one, Jovanka?
No, I think it's OK. I think it's no problem whatsoever. I liked your idea. When you showed me that one, I was like, OK, I'm sold.
Yeah, so Levon Aronian, he's done quite a clever thing. He's brought his knight to the edge of the board, not where it wants to be, but it's going to reroute. That knight is threatening to give a check to the black king, and actually that knight will control any possible squares the rook wants to use to find an open line. So a nice manoeuvre there from Levon Aronian. He's still doing perfectly. He's still keeping control. That's the most important thing. He hasn't allowed any counterplay yet. So Magnus looking for targets with his pieces. There are none. And if there are no targets in white's camp, white has the time, has the luxury of just being able to step forward slowly with his pawns. Magnus down to 5 seconds. 4, 3. he doesn't even have his hand on the mouse. He went down to 2 seconds there.
Yeah, but that's a very reckless move. Was to stop Levon from just capturing that pawn, saying thank you very much.
I think that's pure panic from Magnus Carlsen.
Okay, there was an idea behind it. That's a sneaky idea.
There's a sneaky idea, but
exactly.
I think it's too little too late. Black is threatening to play rook takes bishop, and when the pawn recaptures, Black's corner pawn will drop down and make a new queen. So for Levon Aronian, just move that bishop out of the way. Move it out of the attack, give a check, gain a bit of time as well. And once that bishop steps forward, I think the pawns are simply going to start running.
There we go. He's done it. Yeah, and the king has to move. And OK, well, that's compensation. Black does have the ability now to start attacking the white pawn in the corner, and sometimes the threat is worse than it's more dangerous than the execution, because it can be quite scary and maybe might cause Levon to panic.
Yeah, so if we can maybe just quickly bring up the board while keeping an eye on the players. Magnus, he only has one trick left in the position. The only saving grace for Black will be to win this pawn. He needs to go after this pawn with his rook or with his bishop. If he can get this pawn, then Black has some counterplay. Black's pawn is very close to becoming a queen. I don't think he has enough time, though. I think it's time for Levon Aronian to say, time to go for it. Just push forward, give check, and no matter what Black does, if you, for example, step forward, then the simplest is to just take this bishop off the board and next move, march your king up and make a new queen.
Well, it's happening.
It's happening.
The check has been played, and now Magnus has gone to the side with his king, so there is no check for Levon. But OK, I do like this move.
What a move.
Yeah, just blocks off the rook. Very calm stuff. OK, but the tricks continue, because Magnus is very insistent that he is going to win that pawn. Yeah. But
I mean, Levon Aronian trying to fight back by going for Black's advanced pawn. I'm not so sure about that one. He's given up a bit of control in order to cut out Black's counterplay. Maybe Levon was too worried about Carlsen's ideas there. But OK, he's gambling everything on his far advanced pawns. That knight move is tricky. If Black captures a pawn now with his king, there's a knight fork. White's knight will go up, check, and capture the Black rook. So, I mean, this one... The only reason Levon Aronian hasn't won it already is because of the clock situation. Magnus finding tricks to keep this game going.
This is dramatic, and we do see on the bottom of the screen Wesley So. He's ready for the semi-finals with a win in this game against Alireza Firouzja. Jan Pomnyachi, he's also ready now for the semi-finals. He only needed a draw in that game, and he's going to face the winner of this quarterfinal. Will it be Magnus Carlsen, or is Levon Aronian simply making a huge comeback?
I mean, 3 moves ago, Kaya, I would have said it was a comeback. But suddenly Magnus Carlsen, it looks like he's tricked Aronian. Magnus Carlsen, he's activated the Black King. He's got rid of some pawns. He's heading closer and closer towards a draw.
Wow.
And Levon Aronian, he just lost control. He let Black's king get active. I think he played the right idea, just the wrong order. And suddenly all Magnus needs to do is find a way to give up the Black rook for all of White's pawns, and the game will be a draw. And there we go. Bishop takes pawn. What a move. Giving up the Black bishop, but the White knight should drop off in a moment. It does look like Magnus Carlsen...
What? OK.
OK, it's still super complicated. There's still some chances. But Magnus, now, he's going for a trick. If White plays bishop check, yes, White will win the rook in the corner, but Black will win White's central pawn.
Well, we're going to see it.
We're going to see it. Is this a draw? Black's king, if it gets to the corner of the board, there's just no way to break through. I think this is a draw.
Magnus shaking his head. Actually, we are right now joined by Jan Pomnyachi. First of all, Jan, huge congratulations on a fantastic quarterfinals, reaching the semifinals.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And we are following the drama now between Levon and Magnus. You're going to face the winner of this quarterfinals. I would love to hear your thoughts on what's going on the board here.
Well, I don't think you need my expertise here, because every schoolboy knows the evaluation here. Yeah, so that's just a sad moment for Levon, who clearly was winning, but yeah, he got tricked.
So do you agree, David? Now it's going to be a draw?
Yeah, the Black King will head for the corner, and there's no way to evict it from that square. The game is a draw.
The game is going to be a draw, and that means you're going to face Magnus in the semi-finals, Jan. How do you feel about that?
I don't feel anything special. Okay, yes, that's the table, the tournament table. So the bracket. So I mean, and Magnus is gonna to face Magnus gonna face me. I'm gonna face Magnus. So that's I don't actually know what to add.
All right. Well, finally, you don't seem too happy, even though you must. I mean, you had a great day with 2 wins against Nakamura. Played great yesterday as well. Why are you not sort of overly happy here?
No, I mean, okay, I'm not very excited partially because first 2 games was too simple, too easy actually, and then the game 3 wasn't going a little bit wrong. So at some point I felt like I gave him some slight chances to come back, but I'm not sure if it was like something really serious. But once you get a position in which you have to play Rook A2, this means you played in the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe nothing critical. Yeah. So this line which appeared in the game, I think it's objectively a draw because his king is too exposed. But I mean, anyway, I wasn't too happy about that game.
All right. Well, what is it about for you now then to get ready for semifinals? What will you do to prepare?
I don't know. Just study his games, study our games, study my games, study openings, and hopefully sleep a little.
It sounds like a good idea. We wish you all the best in the semifinals, Jan. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have to say, they keep reacting like this, the players, if they're not too happy about a certain aspect in a game. They don't seem too happy, even though it's a great performance by Jan Pomnyachi.
Yeah, fantastic chess from him. And chess players, they're just perfectionists.
Yeah.
One small error, even in the grand scheme of things, even if that error doesn't matter, we do dwell on those moves, unfortunately. But yeah, Pomnyachi, he's going to give a great match to Carlsen.
All right. And we did see the game with Magnus Carlsen. Wow, what a crazy game. Levonoronian, it looked like he was winning.
Yeah.
It was eventually a draw. We are right now joined by Magnus Carlsen, ready for semi-finals. Congratulations, Magnus.
Thank you.
Now, could I ask you, together with David and the analysis board, to take us through this final game? It was crazy to us.
Yeah, I guess I was outplayed at some point, and I certainly was lost, but somehow I managed to get out of it. Yeah, I'd seen that knight c4 one on the spot, but what could I do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, by now I guess the pawns are just running through. Magnus, was this game, do you think it was just down to the opening? I mean, already around here we thought it was very difficult for Black to even find a move. I mean, was the opening kind of affected by the match situation?
Yeah, sure. He sort of surprised me there, and I couldn't really find a good response at all.
He surprised you at what point? Sorry.
No, already early on by playing Rook D1, he sort of confused me with the move order there. And I mean, I decided just to improvise, but I don't think it was very good what I did. Probably while I had the chance, I needed to take the bishop pair or take his other bishop by checking on e3, because what I got in the game was just very, very unpleasant. And then yeah, I mean, knight d4 was actually when I did that was actually just a blunder, since I'd just missed that he could go bishop c5 and take an extra pawn this way. I was just considering f5. Probably that is good as well.
Okay. So in this position, knight d4.
Yeah, it was a miscalculation. So that was yeah, it wasn't very good. Very good. Today in general, I felt like I played a lot worse than I did the other days. But yeah, fortunately, I got the job done.
So Magnus, right now, is sort of the overwhelming feeling that you're a little bit disappointed with this game, or is it that you actually, I mean, basically you won 2, you could have won 3 games yesterday, another win today, and fantastic preliminaries?
No, sure. I just need to sort of pull myself together tomorrow, because I need to play a bit better than I did today. But obviously, like the worst moment for me today was that I could have lost the game, which meant that I would have had to draw on demand with white in the last game. So in that sense, it wasn't bad at all. But certainly not quite as good as the other days.
I know your father has said this, Magnus. Is it maybe on people on my sort of chess level and definitely below your level, is it a common misunderstanding that it's easy to draw on demand? Is it harder to draw on demand than what we think?
Yeah, I think as white, it shouldn't be very, very difficult, although I have lost some games there as well. But yeah, I think these must-win games are very, very tense for both sides, and frankly, I don't particularly enjoy being on either side of them.
Well, it is Janne Pomnyachi now for you in the semi-finals. I'm very excited about that. How do you feel about it?
No, it's gonna be a good matchup. I think he started out really poorly in the preliminaries and then caught fire towards the end. And I thought today he was very impressive. So that's certainly going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, Magnus, you've known Jan, since you were kids, I guess, and you've played each other countless times. Are you allowed to give us any insight into how you'll be approaching those games?
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important thing is not to give him well, first of all, to pose him some problems in the openings, I guess, and then not to let him have sort of easy play where you can just play quickly with little tactical tricks all the time, something that he does extremely well.
Well, finally, Magnus, in the Champions Chess Tour, have you ever felt better about your play heading into the semifinals?
Again, I would say today wasn't great. If you'd asked me yesterday, no. But no, overall, this was, even with today, this was obviously a massive step up from the last few tournaments.
All right. We wish you the best of luck tomorrow, Magnus. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And the drama is not over today because it's still not decided between these two, Anish Giri and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Anish Giri is up by 1 point, and that means Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, he's going to have to win this game to take it to tie breaks. And that is exciting stuff because Anish Giri has the white pieces, so he's going to be looking for a very safe position, I guess.
Yeah, usually that would be Anish Giri's approach to play safety-first chess, but he's had success with the white pieces by playing quite dynamic, quite critical ideas and not being afraid to go for that fight. I don't think Anish Giri will back down. Meanwhile, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave playing a bit of a risky opening, one that is rarely seen at the top level. He plays the modern defense. That means you just give your opponent the center. You allow your opponent everything they want. They occupy the center with pawns, pieces, and black hopes to kind of curl up into a ball and then counterattack at the right time. Anish Giri, I've seen him play these types of positions plenty of times. He knows what he's doing. So this is a risky approach.
Oh, this is going to be fantastic. I just have to say, after now talking to Pomnyachi and Carlsen, who are both through to the semi-finals, I keep thinking that chess players, your memory is incredible. But when it comes to results, it's like a goldfish memory. You only remember they both had fantastic quarterfinals.
Yeah.
But they only remember that last game that they weren't too happy about. And they seem disappointed.
the pain of defeat is far greater than the joy of a win.
Well, I think it's also something to do with the fact that as chess players, when you're playing on the board, you don't allow yourself to get emotional. I mean, it's actually a really bad sign if you're feeling angry with yourself, or because you can tend to take it too far and just tilt. So, you know, and there is also a danger, actually, that when you win a game, and it doesn't mean that much, but when you lose a game or you have a bad moment, they tend to emphasize that. And that's actually a trap that I've fallen into. And that's that's a really bad thing, actually, because it's a recipe for falling out of love with chess. You got to enjoy every little moment, every little victory that you have. I mean, I personally am just in awe of the fact that Magnus managed to save the most horrendous position. I mean, it was, okay, yes, it was partly to do with Levon missing a golden opportunity, but he posed the problems to Levon to get himself into that situation. And I think deep down, he might not show it in the interview, but deep down he'll be feeling, yes, I definitely saved a lost position, and you get a buzz from that.
Yeah, I mean, they're both great champions, Yana Pomnyachi and Magnus Carlsen, and they're just focused, I think, on the tasks ahead. They know they've got a difficult semi-final against each other, and maybe that's why they're not kind of resting on their laurels and being too proud of their achievements. They want more.
Yeah, I remember reading this a story by Judith Bolger, where she said, you know, she played this tournament and she won the most fantastic game. It was absolutely brilliant, you know, the best game she'd ever played in her life. And, you know, she was so excited from that, like, victory that she just couldn't calm her nerves down when it came to the other games, and she didn't do so well. So,
yeah, it's a lot about emotions as well in chess, then.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. You can be as emotional as you want away from the board, but yeah, when the clock starts, you have to shut that off. And meanwhile, we do see a continuation of this modern defense. This is all very traditional stuff. Okay, I'm not so sure about Anish Giri's last move, but he is playing quickly, and that's the most important thing. He doesn't want to get below on the clock, let the nerves start to set in when he only needs a draw to progress. If we bring up the analysis board, we can see what the players will be thinking about over the next few moves. White has an almost ideal setup. White has these 2 pawns in the middle of the board, and if you look at the white pieces as well, they're perfectly centralized, controlling all the important squares. Meanwhile, Black, his strategy, the reason we call it the modern defense is because actually, until a few decades ago, this type of situation wasn't so popular. Essentially, Black is playing with these 2 bishops. If you notice these 2 bishops, they're on the longest possible diagonals of the board. That is why Maxim Vachier-Graf decided to push forward with this pawn. He's hoping to lengthen the diagonal of this bishop a bit later on. And Anish Giri says, no, I'm going to push forward, I'm going to support my centre and maintain this real grip on the position. If White can keep these pawns intact, White is doing great. If Black can somehow undermine them and explode the position open, especially the centre, for these 2 bishops, then Black will have decent chances to at least cause some chaos a bit later on. Meanwhile, I think Anish Giri, he likes these types of positions where, I mean, he's a classical player, where he controls the space, his pieces are on good squares, and with White's last move, pushing forward, he has clamped down. Black can no longer advance. This is a potential weakness which has been fixed by White's last pawn move. And I think Anish Giri will be happier with the outcome of the opening than Maxim Vachier-Graf. We do see a trade of pawns in the centre, and how simply is Black going to fight against these? It's not obvious.
Well, he's trying. He's challenging that pawn centre with his own pawn, and now comes the big decision. This is like the Kaya scenario here, where you have a situation, a centre that is so beautiful. What do you do? And Anish just goes for the minimum fuss option, which is simply just a capture in the centre. If he wanted to play a little bit more dynamically, he might have pushed a pawn forward, or maybe even let the tension remain. Yep. But as it is, he's like, OK, nope, simple. Simple is good.
Yep, simplicity is what's required in this game. That's all he needs to do, remember, Anish Giri, is make a draw, and he gets through to the semi-finals. That's why he played pawn takes pawn, clarifying the situation in the centre. I'm slightly surprised by Black's last move. I think he had other options. At the very least, he should have just recaptured with the pawn, keep more pieces on the board.
Exactly, and I completely agree with you, David. Keep the tension on the board. And you can just see now there's one extra one less piece to worry about. And when it comes to an endgame, there are certain things that become more and more important. And one thing that I see especially is that black potentially has a very weak pawn on the left side of the board. You can see it, and that is super, super weak. And I can see if that Anish manages to pile on the pressure on that pawn, well, he's going to tie down a bishop and the rook to the defense of that pawn. And this is just going to allow Anish...
Two weak pawns.
Yeah. That one as well. Yeah. And I'm just thinking that he's going to allow him the freedom just to, connect everything with the rooks.
Yeah, and I think all Anish Giri needs to do, firstly, just safety first, I would push a pawn here to control the centre, to stop any knight jumps. And then, next, Anish Giri, he'll just centralise his rooks. And as Jovanka mentions, these two pawns are going to be eternally weak. This pawn is going to tie down the black queen, and this pawn is going to tie down the black bishop and maybe the black rook as well. So black is playing without those pieces. Worst of all, though, this piece. Black's bishop is blocked in behind its knight, and it's blocked in behind this pawn. So this bishop has no future at all. All Anish Giri needs to do is bring his rooks across and maybe bring his knight into the black position. And if these two things happen, I think Anish Giri, not only is he actually winning, but he will have no problem guiding this one towards a draw if that's what he wants.
Wow. And the winner of this quarterfinal looks like it's Anish Giri right now. Will face Wesley So in the semi-finals, who knocked out Alireza Firouzja. And do you think now definitely it's going to be Anish Giri?
It's looking likely. Vasily Graf, he will want to take this whole opening back. He will want to maybe just go back and rely upon his usual openings.
Just look at the board, he's already a pawn down. Anish has just captured the pawn. And the only thing that can save Maxim now is his strength, and that is that Maxim is the ultimate trickster.
But look at Maxim's face there. He just exhaled. He raised his eyebrows. He knows he's completely lost already.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Maxim Vasily-Graf just resign any moment now already.
No. Wow.
How can he even find a move? I dare you. Find a move.
There you go. Maxim found it for me.
But,
he attacked the bishop with the
Do you even want
knight.
to take that bishop, though? If we bring up the analysis board, we can see that Maxim is completely stuck. There we see Anish Giri step the bishop forward. Maxim, look at this. This is a pin here. This bishop cannot move because the rook behind it would just be captured and lost. This bishop has to be defended by this rook and the queen.
You are totally right.
OK, let's bring the players back. Maxim Vasily-Graf just resigns.
Wow.
He's had enough. The position was hopeless, pawn down and a bad position.
It's over. Anish Giri not celebrating on camera, but he is ready now for the semi-finals. A devastating game here to Maxim Vasily-Graf. A devastating day, losing 2 games here.
Yeah, I mean, that last game was just a bit of a nightmare, unfortunately. He took some risks and they backfired very quickly.
Yeah. And against his opponent in the candidates tournament. This is a prestigious one as well.
No, definitely. But OK, he was playing different types of opening. There was a lot of ducking and diving going on. And ultimately, he will be saving the best for the candidates. That is the one. But yeah, definitely not a great start there, because he's going to be annoyed with himself because he, especially that last game, that was just chanceless.
Well, Anish Giri, fantastic day for him, and this game seemed fantastic. Take us through the excitement, David.
Yeah, I mean, I think just showing the last few moves is enough to demonstrate Anish Giri's superiority. Even just the final position. I mean, if you just look at Black's pieces, this rook is out of the game, this bishop is pinned, this queen is tied down defending this bishop. Black, I mean, he's paralysed, completely paralysed. The only active move he can even imagine is knight takes bishop. But now the key behind Anish's idea, he would take with the pawn. Yes, accepting doubled pawns, but more importantly, opening up this rook. And if you look at the teamwork here, a bishop and the queen behind it, all ganging up on this one weak square. Black is just completely lost here. And the problem is, in the final position, is if Maxim Vasily-Graf tries something else, if he, for example, pushes a pawn, White will simply kick this knight away, and once it retreats, bring the final piece into the game. Yeah, I mean, positional masterpiece by Anish Giri, but not a good day at the office for Vasily Graf.
But Anish Giri, how impressed are you with what he has shown so far in this tournament?
Super impressed. He was incredible in the preliminaries. I mean, he had one slip up, but he was so good. And here against Maxime Vasily Graf, he's been winning on demand and he's shown great opening repertoires. And absolutely well-deserved to go into the semis.
Yeah, and against Wesley So, I mean, the winner of 2 tournaments so far in the tour. But who do you think is the favourite in that one?
Yeah, we haven't seen Wesley So too much today, but it did look like a smooth victory over Firouzja. I think Wesley So has to start as the favourite just because of his success in the tour so far. But Anish, as he mentioned earlier a few days ago, he's never felt better than he does right now. He's never played better than he is playing right now. So Wesley So, small favourite, but Anish, he can do it.
Yeah, some exciting semi-finals definitely coming up. I mean,
it's the dream semi-final. Probably the 4 strongest players right now, especially at Rapid Chess. Yeah.
So who has been the most impressive to you so far then? I mean, I think, yesterday or the day before you said Magnus Carlsen. But then, I mean, I still think he had a good day, but not the best day.
Yeah.
Maybe. So who do you think has been most impressive?
Yeah, today definitely wasn't Magnus's best. He admitted that in the interview. But Pomnyachi looking confident, powerful, and same for Anish.
Yep. And we are right now joined by powerful, confident Anish Giri, ready for semi-finals. Congrats, Anish.
Thank you.
What a great day for you. Do you agree?
Probably. Well, so the thing is the following. Today was a win-win situation because either I would start my training session, resume it, basically, or continue the tournament. But now the situation is the following, that no matter how I play, I'm stuck for 4 more days, right? Because of the... So I think now I changed the plan and I'm going to try and win this tournament.
All right. And how are you going to do that against Wesley So in the semi-finals?
It's a secondary thing. The most important announcement is that I've made up my mind. I'm going to try and win this tournament.
Sorry.
That's all I have so far. Now, when it comes to making this plan come true, that's another thing, but I haven't thought about it yet.
All right. Well, Anish, I did ask you a few days ago if you ever sort of felt that you're playing better chess than you have been in 2021. I'm not going to ask you that again today. I mean, your chess playing is fantastic. So what about your chess playing are you the most happy about right now?
Well, I mean, there are, of course, as with everyone, there are also definitely things going wrong. Well, not today, probably, but yesterday, for example, there have been some terrible moves that I made. Chess is a very complicated game. There is never perfection. And the more we learn about the chess, about the game, about the different computers, chess engines, the more we realize how imperfect even the best players are. You know, the Magnus Carlsen himself is like 1,000 points, 1,000 ELO points away from the strongest computer. So even if you play tremendous chess, even if you are in great form, still you are so far from perfection. There is so much to strive for. So I wouldn't exaggerate my, my quality of the games. But of course, I am happy with the results so far. I think it's my this season. It's my furthest best results so far, right? I think I've only been to the final in the previous season. In this season, I haven't made it to the semis yet. So that's something I'm happy about and looking forward. Wesley is a great opponent. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, and Wesley, he has been the conqueror of Magnus Carlsen in previous tour events. Is that going to be, I mean, as well as your goal of winning the tournament, is that going to be one of the inspirations to show Magnus how it's done?
Well, I'm not Magnus Carlsen. I'm not even close. So in that sense, that Wesley is Magnus Slayer, it's not my problem. I mean, I've had lots of games with Wesley. I know him for a very long time. I mean, I've spoken to him the first time I played him. We were both kids, and it was the question, who was sort of who was the bigger prodigy at the time. I mean, we were like, I don't know, 13, 14 or something. He was a year older and a step ahead. And then I've met him later. I've spoken to him back when he was still in Philippines, and he was telling me how he lives alone. And later, the story about him has been told many times, and it's a sort of a sad part in his life. But at the time, the way he said it to me didn't sound so bad. He was saying, I'm living alone. I can watch movies whenever I want. And I was a teenager listening to that, thinking, yeah, sure, sounds good. But yeah, obviously, eventually he moved to States and like all that happened. But I know him for a very long time. I've played with him since the beginning of times. There is a very fun clip of mine also when I was, 13 or something. Very embarrassing. You can find it. You'll probably enjoy it. A good clip to show how I beat him in the Vaikanze tournament, the B group, I think. It's very embarrassing. Very embarrassing. I was still a child at the time. But yeah, I know him for a long time, so it's not like, he's great, but, the history is too long that it's not relevant. We just start from scratch tomorrow.
Yeah. Anish, earlier you mentioned that you were quitting your Twitter creativity for the semi-finals, and now that you've announced that you are you have a goal to win the tournament.
It's one of these.
Are you going to make my life more difficult and stop Twitter?
No, but these things like you say things like, sometimes you tell your wife is saying like, I want this diamond ring, and you say, well, if this and that happens, I'll give you the diamond ring. And you hope that never happens, right? This is also one of these things. Like I was thinking, like again, I have to tweet something, and all the same hashtags and the same this picture, and I was thinking like, let me sort of use an excuse and say that I'm saving my creativity for the semifinals, hoping I'm not going to get there, and I don't need to, Now I have to think about it again. I mean, it's harder, by these days to come up with a new tweet rather than come up with the opening you're going to play. Not to mention, I have to still post a picture with the AirThings device here. See, it's nicely red now. I'm going to shine red because the CO2 is too much. So maybe you can screenshot this and it will count as a picture, or do I still have to post one?
Yeah, I think everything will be very happy with this.
Yes. No, it's great. I mean, it's fantastic. I have tier 3 devices. One, during one of the preliminary days, suddenly it shot, I had this panic shot. Usually I have panic during games because of the blunders, but this time this thing went red. I look and there is like 1,200, I don't know even the unit of CO2.
Yeah.
And 1,200, it's for me, it's like really a lot. It's already like, so I start to have like a panic attack because I feel like I'm dying with that too much CO2, I can barely breathe. Fortunately, I have here my balcony, so I open it while a game is going on and I push the door open and slowly, but I mean, just too much. All these devices measuring everything. I have, I already have like ever since we have this AirThings thing, I already have air purifier, air humidifier. I don't want to see my electricity bill. I mean, all my sockets are plugged. I mean, there are all kinds of plugs. Everything is plugged in. Working on everything. Still, the CO2 is too high. I mean, just.
Air quality, not knowing what to tweet. I mean, that's the definition of first world problems.
All right, Anish. We hope the air quality and that you're feeling fresh tomorrow for the semi-finals. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
Anish Giri, I love having him here in a good mood.
Yeah,
yes.
So great to see him like that. And I mean, as we mentioned, playing some of the best chess of his life, in the form of his life, looking super happy. I mean, it's good signs for the candidates tournament as well next month. Despite
bad air quality, Anish Giri is playing the chess of his life and being in a great mood. We're loving it. Now, the quarterfinals, they're over. So let's take a look at the results from, we did only have one game going to round 4. So Magnus Carlsen, he was the winner of both of the matches. He won also today with one win in the first round. Jan Pomnyachi was able to beat Hikaru Nakamura today. They played a draw yesterday, but Pomnyachi on fire today with 2 wins in the 2 first rounds. And then Wesley So, like Magnus Carlsen, he won the first day. 2 fantastic wins today, and he is through to the semifinals, where he will face Anish Giri, who had a fantastic day today. And here it is. These are the 4 players going through to the semifinals. It's going to be Magnus Carlsen and Jan Pomnyachi, 2 players born in 1990. They've been battling out their whole lives, and so is the story with Wesley So and Anish Giri. They too have been battling it out their whole lives, or at least since they were like 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, I think I remember playing a tournament with them and they were both, 12, 13, and yeah, look at them today. Yeah, no strangers to each other, but they'll be fighting tooth and nail to get to the final.
All right, fantastic. We're looking forward to that. And right now we are joined by our great friend, Simon Williams. Hi, Simon.
Hi there, how you doing?
We're doing good, and just talking about that, it's going to be sort of remembering childhood tomorrow with Pomnyachi and Magnus battling it out since they were 10, and same with Anish and Wesley.
Yeah, one of the nice things about chess is that you do meet people that you basically share a friendship and rivalry with for the rest of your life. So I think that's the case with all the pairings tomorrow. These guys met them when they were babies, and they're still fighting it out at the top level now. So it's a nice game that brings people together and then makes them fight it out to death on the board. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
And I guess, Simon, it's hard to say that we have any surprises in the semifinals. I mean, these 4 players have played fantastic throughout the tournament. Janne Pomnyachi, one bad day, but other than that, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Magnus has been very impressive. He wasn't so impressive today, but the thing is, he was in a very good position, and it's quite hard to play your top-level chess when you're sort of so close to the finishing line. I was particularly impressed with Jan and the way he played. Probably more impressed and happy for him than he was. You know, he was not showing much emotion. I don't know if that's a sign for his big game tomorrow. And the other one, of course, Anish is going to be up against Wesley So, who's performed incredibly well in all the previous Champions Tour legs.
All right. Well, Simon, now I'm actually very excited for the learning point. It's coming up right now.
Right, so this was Magnus Carlsen playing some brilliant defensive play. And to be an all-round chess player, to be a world champion, to be a grandmaster, you have to be good at every area of the game. The opening, the middle game, the ending, tactics, and also defensive play. Now, it seemed like he was under some pressure with the black pieces here, because if you look at White's pieces in the position, White's pieces are tremendously well placed. The rook is on the open file, and that's where you want a rook, because rooks work in straight lines. The bishop is very nicely placed. It can dive in. And also the knight is in the center of the board. And one very important idea that White has is to bring the knight into f6, this dark square, giving check to the black king. So it kind of looked a little bit iffy here for Magnus, but now he plays, I think, a brilliant move. He plays his pawn from 2 squares forwards, right next to the king. And this allows the special move, which is called on pass on, which means capture in passing. So now the white pawn can take that pawn. And you might think, oh no, Magnus Carlsen has forgotten about this rule. He's just lost the pawn. What's he doing? But the point being, he can now move his king, and White doesn't have the same options he has before. So the knight cannot come into that square. The bishop can't come into that square. And he also, in a couple of moves times, gets his rook to the open file himself. So if we just have a look, the rook now comes to that square, and he didn't have this possibility before. So the rook dives into the position, he activates all of his pieces, and it only cost him 1 pawn. But I think this kind of move kind of separates Magnus from a lot of the other strong players. I mean, I would have never have played f5, given a pawn up like that. And it shows that even when you're playing defensive chess, you have to take risks. And he managed to win this game in great style. And I think because of this f5 move.
So was Magnus Carlsen in great shape then? For the start of the day, it just sort of dipped a little bit.
Yeah, maybe he did what, like, I think most of us do. You get very confident, you win the game, you kind of relax a little bit, you know, you take a little breather. But I think a very important rule in chess, because it's really intense, it's an intense game, and you don't have any opportunities to make mistakes. You've got to only relax when you finish the match off and shake your opponent's hand. I don't think there's any other sport which is as intense as chess in that way. You just can't relax at all. And maybe he did that slightly.
How hard is that, David? I'll ask you first.
I mean, it's incredibly hard when you know what needs to be done and you know you're so close.
Yeah.
And, I mean, personally, I always get super nervous. I choke at those critical moments, and it takes superhuman players like Magnus to be able to deal with that so many times. Every single tournament he's the favourite, and every single tournament he tends to perform.
Is Simon, chess one of the hardest sports to sort of play on a result?
I think it's just one of the most intense games or sports you can get, because, I mean, even in like football, you can sort of let a goal in, you can come fighting back. In basketball, you know, loads of goals are scored, you can come fighting back. When you're playing chess, if you play one slightly bad move at this level, you lose. and it's game over. So I do think it's more pressurized than any other kind of activity, which you can see, which makes it so exciting as well, as we see.
Mm. And, Simon, I just noticed, are you celebrating like Ivanka today, St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I've got the sort of green jacket on. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. So yeah, definitely.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I'm just seeing, has Ivanka got a green top on?
I've got a green as well.
Oh, right, okay. Maybe I'm kind of blind. Yeah. No, nice.
I promise it's green. So do you also have a little glass of something nice then, where we can see?
I might have a cheeky beer. Just cheers. I'll just sneak that on. So maybe just waiting there until the end of the show. So yeah, nice cider there. So yeah.
Fantastic. I think you deserve one today, Simon. And I'm looking forward now also to seeing the answer to the puzzle of the day. I know you maybe are a little bit tipsy now, so let's hope you can give us the answer.
I think I'm okay. I'm going to save the rest of that for later. So, well, this was quite an amazing point in chess history. Now, everyone has their breakthrough events, and we had this breakthrough game for Radjabov, and Radjabov's unfortunately being knocked out of the competition, but he's been one of the leading players throughout. And he was here with the black pieces, and he was only age 16.
Wow.
Now, his opponent, this was from 2003, was none other than Garry Kasparov. And Garry Kasparov was world number 1 on rating. He did just lose the world championship match to Kramnik, but he was still rated the highest in the world. And he was dominating every single event he played in. He was an absolute monster at the chessboard. But Radjabov has got into this position here with the black pieces, and he's a piece up. And this is unheard of. I mean, Kasparov was very distraught. He didn't want to lose to some youngster. And now it's, what does black do to convert his advantage into a win? Because even though you're a piece up, you've got to try to get the best out of it. You've got to simplify it if you can and make it as easy as possible. So the move that black now played, a very clever move, was knight on d to c5. And the idea of this move is to simplify the position. When you're material up, you often want to swap off pieces, make it as easy as possible to convert the advantage. This is a very nice way of converting an advantage. And I think one of the things that a lot of players struggle with is winning one positions. But using this little tactical idea, that knight really has to be taken. Otherwise, it's going to go straight into this position in front of the white king. And it has to be taken, and it was taken. But now, after pawn takes knight here, I think you just have rook d8. And this is what is called a pin. The bishop can now not move because it'll be moving into check. And whatever happens, black is going to play rook takes bishop, check, and he's simplified the position. He's made it a lot easier to win. And you can imagine the frustration that Garry Kasparov had here. He was one of the most, shall we say, expressive players ever. I mean, if you think the guys playing here are expressive, Garry Kasparov was an Oscar-winning actor, and he was extremely distressed to lose to a little boy, shall we say. But a breakthrough event there, and a breakthrough game for the young Radjabov.
Wow. So this was in 2003, I think you wrote, Simon. So
that's right, yeah.
So it was this game for Kasparov, and then a few months, 2004, a draw against Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, he was struggling against youngsters, I think, around that time. So, yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, is it time to put Simon on the spot then with the question of the day, Ivanka?
Yeah, Simon. Okay, so we know. Well, we know that you are a grandmaster, but what other skills do you have that are grandmaster level?
Oh, right. Okay. Struggling to answer these questions. Maybe grandmaster at having a real leprechaun St. Patrick's Day real ginger beard. Does that count?
Yes.
I think, it's not fake. I can try pulling it off, but it will stay there. I can promise. I don't know. I guess, yeah, I mean, I used to be quite a good swimmer and things like that, but nothing, I'm not exceptional at anything else, I'd say. Not any sport or anything.
Simon's very good at gardening.
Are you?
Oh, gardening. Well, I used to, I've got my green fingers. I used to like a little bit of gardening, getting my herbs out and growing my herbs. Yeah, so.
Growing herbs and beard.
Never knew that about you, Simon.
There you go. I'm a grandmaster gardener. So, yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Simon, it's going to be a very fun day tomorrow with semi-finals. So take it easy today on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. Have a great St. Patrick's Day and rest of the show.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So how will you usually celebrate St. Patrick's Day in England?
Go to the pub.
Yeah.
Have some drinks with your friends and, just enjoy life. And it's a different story now.
So what would you be doing right now, David, if it wasn't COVID, if it wasn't Champions Chess Tour and your normal life in England?
Actually, I've never celebrated St. Patrick's Day in England.
Oh.
I've only ever celebrated it once, and that was when I was in the US in St. Louis, the home of chess. And in the US, it's a big, big thing.
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we did give him the question of the day, Ivanka. The beard was the answer, and that's a good one. Do we have some fun ones from the audience?
Yeah, we asked, what skills do you have that you are grandmaster level at? And yes, the answers came thick and fast, and they were very funny. Lots of lovely, lovely pictures, which we enjoyed. And here are a few that we particularly enjoyed. And one from Ilya Teklik. He says, I am a grandmaster level at saying, I'll get to these today, but rarely do. Now, that one, I can also challenge you on grandmaster level at. And one from Omar Tishat, who says, I think I am a GM at eating my mum's cakes before she finds out. So
good.
Tasty.
Yeah.
Let's hope she doesn't have Twitter.
And a tweet from Elias A. Bollander, who says, it's not easy being a parent at GM level while simultaneously keeping up with today's games, but I'm trying.
Good job.
It is a good job, yes, certainly. And one from Harry Galsote, who says, my sleeping skills is on grandmaster to legend level. I can sleep anywhere at any time. I could even sleep again after having 8 hours sleep.
Oh, look at you.
Wow.
Look at that.
And he's just sat there on a table. And then we have a commentary from Victoria T, who says her skill is recycling used hardware parts to make DIY chess sets.
Wow.
But the winner of our competition is actually from Peter Illich. He actually wins Airthings Device Mini, and he says, my GM skill is skiing. I'd love to trade David skiing and chess lessons. He did a great job on his first lesson.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Peter. You are the lucky winner of our Airthings Mini, and someone will get in touch with you asking for your details. And congratulations once again. What a fantastic skier on that mountain.
Yeah, that
Very
looks scary. That looked scary.
That's a steep slope.
Yeah, that seemed dangerous. All right, well, semi-finals coming up tomorrow. Who's the favorite to win the Magnus Carlsen Invitational now, Ivanka?
You know, I was really impressed by Magnus Carlsen, the way he saved it at the end. But, I think Wesley.
Ooh, still Wesley so.
Yeah, he's a bit of a juggernaut.
All right, what's your verdict, David?
I'm going to put my neck out and say Anish Giri.
Wow.
I've been so impressed by him, form of his life, and I'm loving his enthusiasm for the game.
All right, well, 4 fantastic chess players do remain in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. One of them will be the winner. But first, semi-finals will decide who heads to the final. And they start tomorrow, those semi-finals, and that's going to be super exciting. So we will definitely be back, even though it's St. Patrick's Day and these people want to celebrate. But we will be here tomorrow, and we hope you will as well. So see you tomorrow. Bye.